Folks, let's get rolling. Welcome everyone to our March 19th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education here at Hillside. We are joined tonight by our Raiders. I know we're all really pumped for tonight. Last year we were all really, I think, inspired and enthused by your presentation. And so we're looking forward to it tonight. But without further ado, I will turn it over first to our Hillside student leaders for our Pledge of Allegiance, I believe. If you'll all rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you so much. So we do have a few orders of business to attend to before we get into the presentation, but we promise that we'll make it relatively fast. And we'll start the evening tonight with our roll call. Our secretary, Ms. Stewart, please.
All right, President Wilson.
I'm here.
Vice President McIntyre will be coming in a little bit after the art show. Let's see, Treasurer Campbell Voitel.
I'm here.
Trustee Mazurek, not here. Trustee Karen Meyer.
Here.
And Trustee Prescott should be coming. And then Secretary Stewart here.
All right, we are rolling with a skeleton crew here for the time being, but we have a quorum, so we're good to go. I will take us to adoption of our agenda, number 4 tonight. Ms. Stewart again, please.
Okay, I'll bring forth motion 86, that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Support.
All right, so I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Stewart and supported by Ms. Meyer. Any conversation, discussion on this?
Yes, sir.
Looks good to me. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, our agenda passes. That brings us to number 5. That would be our consent resolutions, and this will be a long one, and I'll hand it over to Ms. Stewart again.
All right, so I'll bring forth motion number 87, that the board accept the consent agenda items for approval as presented, and that's 5A, minutes of the March 12th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. 5B, minutes of the March 12th, 2024 closed session. 5C, overnight and out-of-state field trips, and that's 5C1, Meads Mill Academic Games Tournament in Atlanta from April 18th to the 23rd. Let's see, 5C2, Northville High School Academic Games Tournament in Atlanta from April 18th to the 23rd as well. 5C3, Northville High School Boys Baseball Trip to Florida from March 22nd to the 29th. 5C4, the high school boys baseball trip to Cincinnati, Ohio from April 12th to the 14th. 5C5, the high school boys golf state finals in Battle Creek, Michigan from June 6th to the 8th. 5C6, the high school boys golf tournament in Grand Haven from April 25th to the 27th. And 5C7, the high school RoboStangs first robotics state competition in University Center from April 4th to the 6th.
Support.
All right, good job, yeah. So I have a motion properly presented again by Ms. Stewart and supported by Dr. Campbell Voitel. A lot of great things on this consent resolution agenda item, including our minutes, which I reviewed and they look good to me. Any discussion on those? All right. As you can see, it's a pretty busy district. Any questions or discussion on this?
I just want to thank the Colt team for answering my emails regarding particular things in this. So, as always.
All right.
As always.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent resolutions pass. Thank you for that. That brings us to our communications. Ms. Stewart.
Back to me. We have received several emails to the npsboe@northvilleschools.org email address, and any community members can send emails to that address, and we review them all.
All right, thank you so much. Well, that brings us to number 7. Are we ready to get into it, or do we want to switch anything up?
I think it's just about Raider time.
All right, Raider time.
And as President Wilson had mentioned, this particular meeting last year just really stuck in my own head personally, and I just want to say something about that. And we had a discussion in this attention the past couple weeks ago around Inclusion Week. And I'll start with something really good, and then something I'm just going to ask people to have a moment of silence with me. So a dad got up at this meeting last year and spoke to the fact that when his child was born, and it was obvious that there were some developmental disabilities there, that one of the things that coursed through his brain was the fact that so many of those things that he had hoped for going and watching your kid play basketball in middle school or something of that nature, that at the time felt it was gone. And the inclusion movement, and really at the high school and here at Hillside, the attention to it, a silent disco, I believe, occurred as well, just really grabbed me. And it's something that I feel like I just needed to mention, and for another reason as well. So unfortunately, we lost one of our students with special needs unexpectedly, a student who was a Raider and a student who was at the high school. And I stopped by the high school today to speak with his teacher. And the fact is, public schools with public dollars take care of each child in a community. We serve each child and each family, no matter what the level of need is, and they deserve it. And that comes with challenges for our staff. At Cook, unfortunately, we may lose 3 to 4 students a year due to the level that they're facing. So if you could just join me in a quick moment of silence and respect to the student that we lost and his family, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. And to the youngsters who have to speak tonight, remember, these board members are used to 4 or 5 hour meetings, so you don't have to go really fast, okay? Just so you can slow her down. And Principal Jones, I think the same goes for you. I know I have to coach myself to slow my speed and cadence down as well. So welcome everyone here to Hillside. It's good to see some people that I haven't seen in a bit, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of your kids as well. So ready to roll.
Well, thank you, Dr. Weber, and thank you, Board, for taking the time to be here with us today and let our teachers and our kids shine. And we're going to start with some of those highlights. We've done the pledge. I don't know if Ms. Ventura was able to make it today. I don't see her leaping out of the audience, so I'm going to cover a little bit of the PTSA update. We quite literally cannot do what we do without the support of the PTSA. This year, we had a little bit of leftover funds, but we had at least 2 rounds of teacher grants this year, which funneled over $31,000 back into Hillside and into classrooms for a variety of things. So Dr. Weber mentioned our unified program. We've got a Peer Links PE class. Mr. Bartel has been instrumental in not only launching that class, but reinvigorating some of our PE offerings to the tune of rowing machines and stationary bikes. If you have had a student who has grumbled about having to do the warm-up lap over and over and over again, this provides an avenue for students who would like to maybe do something else or cannot do a warm-up lap, my daughter included. So now we have rowing machines, stationary bikes. You probably noticed the basketball hoops installed out on the plateau. Those are adjustable, so our 6th graders can dunk. And that has also been a nice community resource, but also gives us another avenue of things to do outside on the plateau. when kids are outside, 3D printers and flight simulators and the wellness corner and the Be Nice program. So many things that that Hillside is able to offer our kids that just don't exist everywhere else. We had a handmade, specially designed harp. Thank you, PTSA. We now have a harp. Our esports team, that is probably one of the fastest growing sports in the state of Michigan. And one of the fun facts about the students who participate in esports is those typically are the students who do not participate in anything else. So for those students to be able to connect with peers who are interested in that same thing, participate in friendly competition. Mr. Hart is one of our new teachers this year. He took that whole thing on for starting it for 2 seasons. Our unified silent disco this year and last, the art supplies, teacher PD, lab equipment, all of those things that all of the things that benefit our kids. We cannot do it without PTSA. Couple of pictures of things kind of in the makerspace and in classrooms, the exercise bikes, books, and junior scholastic, all those additional perks and extras that really I think are some of the things that our kids come to school for. The ergs, the rowing machines, that's kind of a dark picture of the silent disco with the neon and things, but that was just a couple of weeks ago here in the cafeteria. We have gotten some different books for our students in the ASD program and the cross-categorical program that are now in the library, because previously those students wouldn't have the opportunity to have the experience of going to the library to check out a book and maybe just reading it down there. And Ms. Mutri will talk a little bit about the PTSA Advocacy Day, where she took a group of students from Hillside, and I know there was Meads Mill students and high school students there as well, for the Advocacy Day, with a little surprise picture with Governor Whitmer. So thank you, PTSA, for everything that you guys do. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mutri, actually, who is going to bring up probably what will be the highlight of the day as far as our student experiences. Ms. Mutri. Like a herd of ducklings, they just all follow you up. Awesome. There you go.
All right. I am Natalie Mutri. This is my second year at Hillside, and I have quite a few slides, and well, you can see quite a few more students with me. And so we're here. I'm not going to talk much. You'll hear a little bit more from me at the end. So I'm going to introduce it first to Mr. Dylan Santo, who is our 8th grade president, and he's going to talk about the student council conference that they attended at the Bavarian Inn.
All right. Hello, I'm Dylan Santo, and I'm the 8th grade class president. Today, we are here to talk about the middle school liftoff event at the Bavarian Inn. At this thing, we did plenty of activities such as leadership skills, communication, and collaboration with others. I'm happy I went on this field trip, and I'm so happy. I hope people will be able to go back to this so they can feel the happiness I felt.
Hi, I'm Kylie Shornack, 7th grade student council president. This was such a great opportunity to experience. I really appreciate being able to go to the middle level liftoff. I would like to thank everyone who gave us privileges to go there. Not only was it a lot of fun, but they also had amazing food and dessert. At this conference, all the staff made sure everyone is happy. Thank you.
Up next is the MSSP. All right.
Hello, this is, the slide needs to be changed. Hello, this is the MASSP Women's Summit. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay.
The MASSP Women's Summit was hosted by the Michigan School Association of Second School Principals. 290 people attended, 45 schools attended from around the state, and there was 3 keynote speakers, 30 breakout sessions, and out of 143 people, 100% said that they would recommend this event to others.
So we had 10 attendees from Hillside Go, 7th and 8th grade girls. They were Kylie Shornack, Amaya Irfan, Lauren Charles, Hayden Rosenaw, Nora Godusky, Genevieve Kwasny, Nayana Karamitra, Sanvi Shukla, Ria Sani, and Abigail Taman.
At the summit, there were many breakout sessions. The notebook the conference provided with us for was helpful to take notes for the future. Also, within the notebook and during sessions, the information was delivered in a way that was easy to understand how important it is to approach a topic that was sensitive. In addition, the summit taught us to include others and inspired me and everyone else who went there. I was taught a lot of lessons, and I would love to revisit this for years to come.
At the Women's Summit, personally, my favorite breakout room was the Barbie movie recap discussion. In this discussion, we talked about the lessons, values, and morals that were discussed in the Barbie movie. This allowed for some very deep conversations between girls around the table and allowed you to make connections with the girls around the table. It was an incredibly valuable experience, and I will treasure it forever. Oh, we can skip this slide.
The summit was great for empowering women. It gave us a chance to share our thoughts and learn from each other. We heard inspiring stories of how women overcame challenges. I think the district should send us again next year so we can keep learning and growing together.
The summit also had really good food. They provided breakfast, lunch, and dinner cost-free, and they made sure to provide vegetarian options for people like me who are vegetarian. It was good vegetarian options, and they were just making sure to be inclusive with all the food.
Thank you for sending us.
Thank you for sending us. Thank you.
Next up, I have, who's my president? Oh, that's Dylan again. I'm sorry.
All right. On December 19th, the 7th and 8th graders and youth and government and student council members decided to give back to the community by planning a school-wide food drive where we collected over 500 items, and then we went to the homeless shelter, Crossroads of Michigan, which is located in Detroit, Michigan.
We are so proud to share that we have collected close to 500 cans of food at Hillside Middle School and delivered these food to the unprivileged. At Crossroads, we shelved their pantry and learned about our great impact that we had on them. We are so grateful that we had this opportunity and felt like it was a truly amazing experience, and it was an honor to serve the community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emma Vitaki, and I'm here to tell you about the visit to Oakmont Senior Center. It was on December 20th. During this visit, we delivered over 150 cards, which when we brought these cards, it brought smiles to all of the seniors during this holiday season. Here comes the skating party.
In the beginning of Inclusion Week, Hillside Middle School hosted a skating party on March 1st, 2024.
This was located at Bonaventure Skating Arena Park in Farmington. This was great because we got to hang out with our friends, and this was for Inclusion Week.
150 people attended the skating party, and whether you skated or not, it was super fun to hang out and meet new people.
All right, up next, we have Izzy and Nora. Well, Nora just got done, but Izzy, and she's going to talk about the Michigan PTSA Advocacy Day. I'm sorry, and Miss Ria Sani, who's going to talk about that as well as her group, Youth in Government, which is YIG.
Hi, everyone. I'm Isabella Ho, Vice President of 8th grade, and I will next be talking about the Michigan PTSA advocacy. A total of 12 students attended from Youth in Government and Student Council. I felt my personal experience was very rewarding and eye-opening. I have learned a lot from that meeting, such as all the tremendous effort put into our school district and others. I truly believe this event can help empower the younger generations and educate them on being influential leaders. Secondly, I observed that the Capitol is a place for anyone regarding background. If they put their heart and mind into it, they can become a great leader, no matter where they are from. To conclude, I was honored to meet such inspiring figures who educated me and my fellow peers on how to be the next leaders of tomorrow.
We also had the chance to meet other schools and students. We were able to ask and have one-on-one conversations with elected legislators like Matt Kolazar, and we even had a photo op with Governor Gretchen Whitmer. We learned about the importance of mental health and safety, and this experience was so much fun, and I'm so glad I had this opportunity to go with both Student Council and other youth and government members. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce my new club, Youth and Government, a new YMCA club at Hillside. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ria Sani, the proud founder and president of YIG, and here with me, I have Priya Sastry and Kylie Shornack. Our board members, we're absolutely thrilled to announce that this year, for the first time ever, we've kicked off a YMCA club right here at Hillside, and its branch, the Youth in Government, has quickly become one of the coolest new clubs at Hillside. Our sincere thanks to Mr. Jones, Mrs. Mutri, and our parent advisor, Dr. Sani, for making this incredible opportunity possible for us.
This program is all about student leadership and diving deep into how government works, and it's open to all teens across Michigan. No matter what your interests are, there's a place for you here.
As evident from the pictures, we've already had some unforgettable experiences, like writing and debating real-life bills on the actual House of Representatives and Senate floor in front of the student speaker of the House at the Capitol building in Lansing, and we felt just like actual politicians.
We supported our community through a food drive with the Student Council for a Detroit homeless shelter and gained insight into government decision-making, meeting Governor Whitmer and officials at a Michigan PTA advocacy event.
But that's not all. Just a few hours ago, we were honored to have our very own Northville Mayor, Brian Turnbull, come and visit us. He provided us with firsthand insights into the governance of our very own Northville. We're also planning a new bake sale for Earth Day, aiming to support environmental initiatives. Plus, we have introduced new roles to keep YIG vibrant for younger students, and we are so excited about expanding to Northville High School. Thank you so much for your support. And now I would like to hand it off to Pink Ladies.
Hi, I'm Hayden Rosenaw, the president of Pink Ladies, a new women's empowerment club here at Hillside. I started this club along with Genevieve Kwasny and Maria Nasova because I was inspired by the Women's Summit that we went to. This club started in February, and we have many amazing meetings since. In these meetings, we've talked about 6 influential women in history, and we've also had a role model talk. At our last meeting, we had a self-defense instructor come in and teach us some things about women's self-defense. And at our next meeting, we're going to introduce the Period Essentials Drive. This drive is going to be a drive for women in need, and we are going to collect menstrual products, underwear, and bras for women who cannot afford it. We are very excited. Thank you.
Now Ms. Mutri is going to close.
Okay, if we could give a round of applause to all of the students that presented. When I tell you all that they created the slides, now I love taking pictures, so I can't give them all the credit for the pictures, but the students arranged the materials, wrote their things out. Of course, they rehearsed it, but they did so in such an eloquent way. So I'm so very proud of them. And also when we went to any and every conference, our Northville kiddos stood out, our Hillside kiddos stood out, from their questions to their answers to their energy to participate. Everywhere Hillside went, they were always highlighting us. So that was also excellent. So again, thank you, board, for allowing us to go. Thank you, Mr. Jones and Ms. Provo, because she was also at the Women's Summit. I just didn't put that photo of her up there, but we had a great time. And so again, to all my student leaders, if you all have any questions, I know last year the board had some questions for my students. So I was gonna, if you all have any questions for them, now is the time, and they are ready.
Questions?
Well, I mean, this is all wonderful and very impressive. Kudos to all of you and all your clubs. I was wondering if the student council conference, if you could tell a little bit more about what was discussed there, if you were interacting with other student councils, or if there was an overarching theme.
So at that conference, basically we did a ton of activities such as like solving puzzles with other students, and we had to work together to, it was a lot of collaboration that we worked on and leadership qualities that like we played capture the flag and we did puzzles, and it was just a really good experience, and we got to work on like collaboration with other students.
Do you feel like that helped you work together better?
Yes, I do.
And then I also just wanted to get some thoughts on, I was very impressed by the Pink Ladies Club, and it seems like you were inspired by this, the Women's Summit that you went to. And I'm just curious for some of these young ladies, why do you think those kinds of things are important? Or why is it important to you?
It's important to me because I know I've experienced some things just being a woman, and I know that in the future I'm going to experience things just being a woman. So it's important to me to recognize those things and learn about those things to learn how I can deal with it.
Yeah, I think you covered it all.
Thank you.
So a lot of times when I go to conferences, as wonderful as they are during the structured time, there's usually time either in the hallway or unstructured interaction with other kids that are there with you, where you can really talk to one another. Was there any surprises or anything that you benefited from just meeting the kids from all around?
The dance routine. Okay, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, you got it.
There was a lot of times where we got to spend time with people that we necessarily didn't know that came from all like different parts of Michigan. Especially during the Women's Summit, we had this Barbie dance where if you went to the Barbie dance class, me personally, I didn't go to it because there was a lot of different things, but it was just, you could learn like the Barbie dances and you got to perform it at dinner, and it was just so much fun. It looked like they were having a blast up there, and yeah, it was. Yeah, I was really happy. I got to meet new people and all of that. So yeah.
And then I ran into last year's, she's at the high school, Serena Berry. So I didn't include her photo here, but she saw me and she was so happy to connect again. And she came back. So for year 2 of it, she said, this is even better. And again, like the Barbie, they're not doing this justice with the Barbie dance thing. It had to be at least 50, if not 100 girls all on the stage doing the Barbie choreography. It was adorable. But the girls just, all schools, and I think they only had like an hour to learn it. And so for them to perform it in front of their peers who, some of them they don't know, was amazing. So again, it was just a huge positive, uplifting events for all of the girls and even the adults that attended.
Right. Well, I hope that some of you got home with some contacts from these new groups of people that you met from all over the state, because that's really the networking that you come home with are going to be ways that you can spin relationships, you can continue collaboration, outreach, sharing ideas. And that's really kind of the secret sauce of these conferences, really, is those personal connections you make. So bravo for you, and how wonderful that you've had such a great dose of leadership and self-awareness, as well as governmental functioning too. I think that's really terrific. So bravo.
Thank you.
Go ahead, yeah.
So I was curious, I know we have at least one of our unified basketball team members here. Does anyone else, I know we've got Emma that plays on the basketball team. Does anyone else play on the basketball team? No. So I was just wondering, not only the basketball, but also like the silent disco, you talked about the skating party and, the different Inclusion Week events that you guys all participated in. So I was just wondering if you guys have anything to share about that.
Yeah, so we do those to include everyone, including like we have like a special needs program, like with the Unified and the Silent Disco. We use those to like make them feel more included, because their main goal is just to make some friends, because sometimes they're like, because sometimes people might not like come near them because they're afraid, but their main goal, they might not go to people, but their main goal is to make friends. And the Silent Disco and the Unified Basketball is a way for them to do that.
Does anyone else have anything to share?
During Inclusion Week, I was just honestly really happy because I got to talk with people I usually normally don't talk to, because maybe I don't see them during the hallways, but it was just really happy, or yeah, it was just happy for me to like go outside my comfort zone and talk to people I normally don't talk to. So definitely a new opportunity for me. So.
Like Lauren said, I did feel like a lot more happier during Inclusion Spirit Week. Like it was a lot of fun seeing everyone dress up and like come together and like look like all similar with all their different like hero costumes and everything. And I even went to the skating party that we talked about earlier. I went this year and last year, and even people like who didn't go last year, they were all saying that it was so much fun and they were so glad that they went this year, and it was just a lot of fun.
I have to say, I'm really impressed with this group. I mean, the things that you're doing, the energy and the passion, Ms. Mutri, I think you mentioned it, but it's obvious to us. Thank you for all that you're doing. I think it's great. Obviously, things like having conversations right around topics and meeting great folks like the governor, House Rep Kolazar. He's a great friend to us. The mayor is another great champion for Northville. Great guy, great person there. But what I really like is that you guys are actually doing things, right? You're doing things too. Cans, I forget the number, 150 cans or 500 cans. Cards for seniors, right? The period essentials drive, I think it's here. You're actually doing things, right? Whether it's a skating party or things to be inclusive. So I just want to commend you all and say thank you for doing this. What's the overarching group that oversees or captures all these different endeavors? Is it student government? STUCO is the new kind of buzz acronym for me, STUCO. But what is it? What's the overarching kind of group for all these different groups? Student council? Okay. Gotcha. So what part was new? Was it, it wasn't YIG, it was...
Well, YIG is a new club.
It is new.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the new, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but we haven't like went to Lansing that much with like the Senate bill and all that stuff. And we also like, I don't think Mayor Turnbull has ever like come to like Hillside and like, but it was a really good experience.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And I'd like, yeah, and any Colt members or anything like that, feel free to jump in as well. But I want to say before the piece, we all kind of circled up and talked. You guys nailed it. And what I like to say to people when they say, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a professional educator." And they're like, "Oh, what do you think about the kids these days?" And I say, the world is in very good hands because of the kids that I'm privileged to serve beside, to see, to be with. And you proved it tonight. I wish the more people in the world could hear not only your confidence and your poise, but more importantly, I want to go on something that each of the board members mentioned. And that's the fact that you are getting after things that make this world a better place, whether it's better for a group, the entire school, and so on. And I can't help but, I don't want to look at some of my Colt friends over there, but I'm looking at the pink ladies there. And I remember when the film came out. Yep, it was a film. Didn't stream it with the original Grease that they were in there. Look at that. You guys got it too. You're smiling. I love it. And to meet the governor, wow. I had no idea that you were with her as well, which is kind of neat. And I think the Capitol is a beautiful space. Was there any part of the Capitol building itself, if you'd never been there, that was particularly striking or interesting to you?
So one thing that I thought was just like amazing was like the place that when I went to Lansing for the first time this year, we were like actually like getting to communicate with people and like do bills and stuff. And it was like the room where like all the representatives come, and it was really cool to kind of like experience what they kind of experience while they do their job.
Leon, could you go ahead and click back to, there was a picture where they're in the, yeah, right there. So they let you sit in the chairs and everything?
Yeah.
What were they like? Were they like really leather bound and overstuffed and things like that? I'm just jealous. So you can tell I'm a social studies nerd, like, and Mr. Boffman, please reserve your comments about that. But what a great experience, Miss Mutri, and thank you so much for that. The pieces, again, I want to say there's a lot of proud parents here and teachers in this room. The future's okay. I'll look you all in the eye and say it's more than okay. These kids, I'll speak for myself, are way better than I ever was as a middle schooler. You speak better, you get after things that matter. And as your superintendent, I'm really grateful for each of you and your families. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Mr. Jones, you're back.
I'm back. All right, Leon, good. Thank you, sir. And I'm just going to give a little parent perspective on the follow-up to what Emma mentioned as far as the skating party. My daughter and I went to the skating party. My daughter's part of Miss Kay Spears' class. She's a cross-categorical student. She's part of the unified basketball team. And, you know, kind of echoing what Dr. Weber said, you know, when you have a child with a disability and you get that diagnosis, the things that go through your head are all the things that you're going to lose. So thinking that, you know, I'd ever sit in the stands and watch my daughter play basketball, never thought that would be a thing. And as somebody who lives out of district and brought their child here for our programming, when we went to the skating party, and the kids wanted nothing to do with me. They see me every day. But she was, you know, pretty well joined to my hip. And there was probably at least 4 or 5 kids who would skate by and say, "Hi, Ava. Hi, Ava. Hi, Ava. Hi, Ava." And the last kid, I wasn't sure if I knew the name. So I said, "Ava, who's that?" And she said, "That's my friend." And that is what kind of brought it all together. Maybe what I should have said was, "What is her name?" But when I said, "Who is that?" She said, "That's my friend." So just, we talk a lot about Unified. We talk a lot about that work. So thank you to Ms. Caspear and Ms. Broadfear. I see you guys out there and all the kids that make that happen. So, all right, on to other things. I'm going to kind of divide this section into 2 pieces. One will be me kind of laying the groundwork a little bit for what it is that we do here at Hillside regarding equitable grading, and then we'll circle up a little bit and hear from some students and from staff about what that actually looks like in practice. And before I get started, I want to say thank you to the board for being willing to hear this presentation, to Dr. Weber and Mr. Boffman for not only allowing, but encouraging us to present on this topic. I think I can speak for all of our staff to say that we have been engaged in this work for almost a decade. And a lot of times that has felt like very lonely work. So being able to be here in front of the board and nerd out and talk about grading of all things, it means a lot to us. So thank you for listening. So I'm going to start with a couple of things, and I brought props. So 3 foundational texts that kind of drive what we do. I am really no fun at parties because this is the kind of thing that I really enjoy learning about, talking about.
You get a chance to go to parties with all that.
Yeah, occasionally. I'm really not allowed because my wife's like, "Listen, if you start talking about grading again, I'm going to punch you in the face." It helps that a lot of my friends are teachers and school psychologists, and you know, but I think even they're getting tired of me hearing me talking about this stuff. So this is not something that Bill Jones made up one day. This is a small taste of, at least 30 years of research and learning about these practices. I'm going to condense that down to 3 that have, or maybe 4, that have really driven the practices that we do here. So starting in the middle, Ken O'Connor is one of the OGs for discussing grading. His book is pretty foundational. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the 15 fixes for broken grades, of those 15 fixes, Hillside is pretty actively engaged in 12 of them. And the 3 that we really can't tackle are things that are a little bit more systemic, report card structures and some of those things that are beyond the reach of a school or a classroom teacher. He was one of the inspirations for Tom Schimmer, who I have seen at least 3 times and been to several conferences. Grading from the inside out, the very aptly named, because its focus is really on the classroom teacher and what they can do from their interior perspective and out into the classroom without changing the system, without changing report cards and grading policies and all those kind of things. But what can you do as a teacher when you engage in these processes? How can you bring accuracy and grow student confidence? And we'll talk about both of those things. And then finally, Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, one of those foundational pioneers in the idea about the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So taking all of this, those 3 texts, that leads to really 3 foundational pillars that support all the work that we've done here over the last couple of years at Hillside. So those 3 things, starting in the middle, is really driven by fostering that growth mindset. Contrary to popular belief, there are second chances in real life. If you are a person, perhaps a person in the audience, who did not pass your driver's test the first time out, or your teacher certification test, or the bar exam, you're not a failure, you failed. And those are 2 different things. So when you do not find success that first time, what do? You either give up or you try again. And you go back and you do more learning and you fix the mistakes and you try again. And when you pass, you get the same certification, the same driver's test, or the same driver's license as everybody else. And there's no little special note on it that says, well, it took you 2 times or 3 times. If you meet the standard, you meet the standard. So especially for our middle school students, the idea is that failure, whether behavioral or academic, should be free. And if not free, then very low cost for now, right? These are 11-year-olds. We can afford them a little grace, a little flexibility. And in doing so, we foster that kind of grit and perseverance, and kids don't give up. And that's what we want. That leads to the second pillar of equity, and essentially the idea that every kid should have a fair shake. Validity is in question when grades mean different things in different schools or subjects, in different teachers' classes, and for different types of students. And I'll draw your attention to that last piece, that different types of students. Consider our kids who may not have a supportive adult at home in the evening to monitor work, to monitor practice, to push and guide and support and answer questions. It'd be really nice if your mother was a math teacher. She can help you do your homework. But if she's not, or she's not there, you are at a disadvantage. Students without means who cannot pursue remediation and tutoring and all those additional supports are at a disadvantage. And I'm going to preface this last one with this question for educators and everybody else in the audience. Show of hands, who agrees with this statement? Some kids take longer to learn. But we penalize kids who don't learn quickly. If you do not meet that predetermined timeline, if you stumble on your practice, if you get home and you don't understand, you're not going to make it. We prize kids who learn quickly and meet our timeline. Those who learn more slowly are at a disadvantage. And when they're at a disadvantage, now we're endangering that equity. So what that translates for me, from my first day here, in my initial conversations with teachers, I've always said, I will support any practice that improves accuracy and grows confidence. Now, growing confidence is important because whether you're a student who learns slowly, if you're a student who fails from the outset, I think all of the teachers in the room have had the experience of the kid who realizes that they have failed so much and dug a hole so deep, there is no way they will get out. If you sprinkle on top of that the 100-point scale, where every 40 needs an 80 just to be a 60, kids realize pretty quick they cannot make it, and they quit. So, what is the important thing? Important thing for us, certainly in middle school, is ensuring that kids become confident learners. The grades you get in 6th grade social studies, the NWEA scores that you get in 7th grade don't matter. What matters is the kind of kid you become and the time that you're here, so that you become that confident learner who will recover from failure, persevere, study harder, try again, ask for reassessments over and over and over again. And if those are the kids that we are producing, those are the kids that will be successful in high school and in college and life beyond. So what does that look like here? Just a quick little timeline, I guess, for how we got here. So I began as principal in 2016-17, which feels like a really long time ago. That first year, I tried to begin with informal conversations with staff, trying to understand what is it that we do here? What do those practices look like? And occasionally, I might push back a little bit, and I might ask that question, how is it that what we do, does that support accuracy? Does that grow student confidence, these things that we're doing? And our teacher leadership team began, just in that small group, reading Tom Schimmer's book, The Grading from the Inside Out. We took that book to the whole staff the following year. I bought a copy for every single staff member. I continue to buy a copy for every person that I hire. Welcome to Hillside. Here's your book. Right? Thank you. So at the end of that year, the teacher leadership team drafted that Hillside statement of belief that took some of those learnings, put them on paper. I share that regularly at our, well, for anything, this is good for leaning, at our open house communication, so parents know what it is that we do here at Hillside. Maybe you've received one of those emails. So we drafted that. The following year, we did some whole staff revisions, some edits, and we began to put some of those practices into action. The easy stuff, eliminating the punitive practices, right? We're not going to take off 10% just because you turned it in on Tuesday instead of on Monday. You don't know 10% less. That skews accuracy. Practice versus assessment, differentiating within our own practice, within our own classrooms. What is the difference between those things? And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And beginning down the road of reassessment. If you give me your very best and you want to do better, I will give you a second chance. We can afford a little grace and a little mercy with our kids. COVID and after COVID, during COVID, the district adopted Schoology as our kind of universal learning management system. And that gave us a chance to kind of restart and reset, and certainly on the gradebook front, to standardize what that gradebook looked like. Since we all had a new system and we were all setting it up from the first time, let's all do it the same. So essentially what that started with was we went to an approach where assessment, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means, assessment counts for 100% of a student's grade. At the same time, we also moved off of the 100-point scale to the 8-point scale, which aligns with our IB and our MYP approach. So kind of to put that on the one slide, what we all do now, every teacher, every class, consistency, because validity is in question when grades mean different things in different people's classrooms. So we have all eliminated those punitive practices. We don't penalize things for being late. You don't know 10% less because it comes in a day later. Practice without penalty. Grades determined by assessments only. Does assessment just mean a test? An assessment does not mean a test. Assessment can mean a test. It could be a project, it could be a test, it could be a paper, it could be a conversation, it could be a presentation. What I ask teachers is, you teach a concept, a student has a chance to practice that concept for free, they get feedback on that practice, and afterward, you may assess. That assessment might happen at home. Contrary to popular belief, we have not banned homework. Students are still expected to do some work at home. Assessment might happen in class. It might be the same. It might be a little bit different. Assessments count. Practice does not. That little snip on the upper right is a little picture from kind of the back end of a Schoology grade book. Assessment weighted 100%. Practice is not. Reassessment. This is a deal that we make with kids. I am your teacher. I will give you my very best. If you as a student give me your very best, you do your practice, you give me 100%, and you don't do as well as you want, and you say, Mr. Jones, I think I can do better. May I try? The answer is yes. So we will reassess. Most teachers will handle that in a classroom individually. I think Mr. Tumalo might kind of give you an example about this is not a redoing of the event. This is just reassessing what it is that a student knows. We have also moved off of the 100-point scale. We do everything on a 0 through 8. That is typically associated with IB rubrics. What you see up here is kind of a shorthand version of the rubrics because the full thing is not always appropriate. But on a 100-point scale, you have 59 levels of failure and 41 levels of success. On this scale, you have 1 level of failure and 7 levels of success. Can a student earn a 0? Absolutely. Do they? Not often. Because every kid knows something, and we give them credit for knowing something. So we have moved off of the 100-point scale. We have moved away from letter grades. We assign letter grades 4 times a year on report cards. It converts, it's back channel, kind of on Schoology. We figured out a way, well, Jen Lawson out there, and Ms. Canistaro, thank you for doing the math. Helps to have a math teacher in your pocket. Figured out the ways to make it work where we can give kids 6s and 4s and 3s and 2s and 7s and 8s, and then all of a sudden, 4 times a year, they get an A-. So what does that mean district-wide? As I'm sure you're aware, we have a district grading committee. Several of the teachers that you'll hear from tonight are serving on that committee. In year 1, we used a repair kit for grading as our foundational text to identify what some of those first steps might be that we could take at the secondary level, district-wide. I will not go so far as to call them the easy ones because there was a lot of conversation and it was not easy to get to those first steps. Now that we are in year 2, we are considering the next steps. And reading grading for equity is the next foundational text. So in the coming slides, you'll see 12 of those 15 fixes for broken grades. As I said, Hillside has committed to all of these. The greens are the ones that we have started on district-wide, right? Including only achievements, not student behaviors in our grades, not reducing marks on late assessments. At Hillside, kids get full credit for what they know. I don't take off 10% because it's late. I don't take off 30% because it took you twice or 3 times. You get full credit. If you hit the standard, you hit the standard. We don't use extra credits or bonus points. If you want to demonstrate additional achievement, you have to demonstrate additional learning. Seems pretty clear. Behavioral consequences when kids demonstrate academic dishonesty. You don't give them a 0. It skews the accuracy and it lets them out of the assessment. So we reassess. You don't reassess the marks, and there's a consequence for that. But that is a behavior, and that earns a behavioral consequence. We don't consider attendance and grade determinations, and we provide clear descriptions of proficiency levels, and that is something that The IB rubrics have been very instrumental in, because all of our teachers will lay out, what does that performance look like? We're not going to quibble about the difference between a 73 and a 75, but every teacher here can tell you the difference between a 4 and a 6 and an 8. And we make that clear to students from the outset, so they're not asking for points. They're asking for, how do I show you different demonstrations of learning? Because the primary purpose of grades is to communicate what that learning looks like, to communicate achievement. The other things, we don't curve. We use evidence from high quality assessments. If you were to travel to a local pond, you might find at the bottom of that pond the Scantron machine that used to live at Hillside. It doesn't live here anymore. Relying on central tendency and professional judgment. All the teachers here have heard me say, my star does not give grades. Teachers give grades. Use your professional judgment. The math can be helpful, but you are the teacher. You decide what the grade is. Not relying on the mean average. So I starred this one. It's something that we're working on. I wouldn't say that we've got it figured out. Schoology makes it easier, but not easy. You can do things like decaying averages and weighting things that are more recent, but we haven't perfected it yet. But what I will say is that when you take your sum total of things that you count and you lower that, then that average, first of all, is based on really important demonstrations of learning. And we do not continue to penalize kids who learn slowly. If I'm going to give a grade on November 1st, I want to communicate to parents, this is what the kid's learning looks like on November 1st, not what it looked like on September 1st or October 1st. And those zeros and those low scores, when you count everything, continues to haunt kids for weeks and weeks and weeks. And thus that end score is kind of diminished. Not including zeros in grade determination. So now as we get into the yellows, these are the things that we are considering at that district committee. Haven't decided, haven't recommended, but this is the conversation. This is something that we're doing here already, have been doing for 5 years. Don't include zeros in grade determination. Now, does that mean that a kid can't earn a 0? Absolutely not. Talk to the teachers. I'm sure they'll tell you there are still kids who don't do the practice. If you don't do the practice, you might earn a 0, but it doesn't decimate your grade the way that it would on a 100-point scale. It doesn't really decimate your grade at all if it's practice. Do kids earn zeros on assessments? Very rarely, because that kid would have to know next to nothing, and every kid knows something. Using evidence primarily from evaluative assessments, not using formative assessments. Again, when you're not counting practice, when you're not saying, well, Lindsay, you got a B, but you know what, you failed back in September, so I'm gonna have to knock that down a little bit and give you a C-. Right, so let's be clear about the things that we are assessing. And not leaving us. So we've talked a lot about fair process, we've talked a lot about restorative practices. We grade with our kids, not at them or to them. And that reassessment, they are certainly a part of that, right? Mr. Jones, what do I need to show you? What do I need to do better? And I have an answer for that. Now, the quote at the bottom might be a little unpopular, but it's very true. The time has come to be clear that teachers are not independent contractors. Grading must not be a private practice. It must be a shared practice based on published procedures. Whether you are the principal of Hillside or a teacher at Hillside, this is not a kingdom. We all are part of the same system. I must follow board policy and board procedures. I have a part to play in that, but in the end, we are all part of this system. I was a high school English teacher. I didn't get to just pick whichever books that I wanted and teach them because I liked them. And if the board said, well, we didn't approve that, and I said, well, I'm sorry, that's the one I'm going to teach, I probably would not be teaching English there very long. So, now, you've heard my pitch. You see my pile of things here. And you can say, Bill, that sounds great. And, you know, we appreciate all your books, and that's wonderful. But, you know, what if we did that and it didn't work? The scores go down, the grades go down, college acceptance goes down. What does that really mean? And I think that it's easy to say, we're Northville. Our scores are good, our grades are good, our kids get into college. And I think as board members, you've heard all of those things are true. And my question to you would be, at what cost? What does that mean for our kids that have to endure those practices? Can't we have both? My answer to that is a resounding yes. Innovation and achievement are not mutually exclusive. You can change things. You can innovate. You can take risks, and it will work. So these are the Hillside PSAT scores for the last 8 years. We began this process 17-ish. Those scores stayed the same. Had a COVID gap. College Board made that test a little bit harder. So we had a dip, as did everybody else. Our kids rebounded. And where are we at? Number 8 in the state. I'll take that. M-STEP, number 1. I'll take that too. Now, correlation is not causation. I'm not going to tell you that we're achieving these scores because of these grading practices, but what I will say is that we can do these practices and have the scores that our community expects. To answer the follow-up question, okay, Bill, that's great for middle school. What about later? How do those kids do later on? So we follow that data. We track those kids. We look at those numbers. Hillside kids, last year, significantly outperformed the district average. They're doing just fine. So what would it look like to expand that, to support hope and redemption in our classrooms instead of anxiety and terror and fear in our grading practices? I would wager that you could go to probably any display, any classroom in the district, and you'll see some kind of display about mindset. These are gleaned from some of our teachers sitting in the audience. And it's easy to put this on your wall and say, hey, I expect mistakes, and it's just part of life. That's part of learning. If you're Mrs. Lawson, you can take the Star Wars approach, kind of consider it like the Force, right? A mindset has two sides. You have the light side, right? When you're a kid and you're eager to learn and you're willing to take risks and embrace challenges and do things that are difficult because you know if you fail, you're not doomed. Those are the kids that we want. They'll try again, they'll persevere, they'll take feedback, and they won't perseverate on the grades. Or you live on the dark side, and you're afraid, and you're motivated by fear, and you don't take risks. You can't afford a zero. You might be willing to push that AI button because cheating is better than failing. So you avoid challenges, you quit when it's hard, and you feel threatened by other people's success because it's finite. Tomorrow's a brand new day. Making mistakes is a part of life, and there's always a plan B. And again, it's easy to put these things on your wall. It's harder to actually engage in the practices that make them come alive in your classroom. So, what I'm going to do is maybe ask our teachers and our kids to circle up and talk about what that means in the classroom. So if you give us a minute, we'll kind of rearrange things.
That's right.
Teachers to my right and kids to the left.
Don't slide out of the building. It's fast.
Provo, if you can be.
She did. She did.
Priya, do you mind jumping over next to Leon so I can give that one to Miss Provo? No, I'm going to do one, so I can just do, this will be our talking piece. There we go. Okay.
Confused.
Good. All right.
Jim must be.
You guys could space out a little bit, because I think I think Kelly and Karen might be dashing back and forth for the mic. All right, so hearing me talk about it, I think is going to be hopefully much less powerful than hearing from our kids, from our practitioners who have been engaged in these practices for almost 8 years, something like that, to varying degrees. So we'll start. I'm going to have a similar format. We've got a topic, and we'll have questions for teachers, questions for kids, and then I'll have a little bit of a quote at the end. That will keep me from rambling on for a half an hour, because it's my favorite thing to talk about. So considering our growth mindset, asking our teachers, how do our practices of practice without penalty, only scoring assessments, and reassessment support a growth mindset? And for our kids, do you feel like you have the ability to make mistakes and learn again?
For me, you know, I believe it really does remove that stress, and it focuses on the learning. Did you learn the material? There are students that, like my daughter, that need to spend time doing that practice, that really have to slow down. And then there are other students who are like, yeah, got this. Can I work on my English paper because I understand this topic? And for me to say, I don't really care, do your homework, get it done, or you're not going to get 10 points, you're going to get a 0. That doesn't benefit anybody. And so for me, it allows kids to take ownership of their learning and to really demonstrate, okay, what do I know and what have I learned?
Hi. I think what we're doing here is shifting the focus from grades to understanding. And just a human nature point, I think we all want to feel that if we can do something better, we'll have the opportunity to show that. Again, human nature.
One thing that I really appreciate with this focus is that I can start having conversations with my kids about what it takes to learn something and the skills that are gonna carry on beyond my classroom. I'm a second career teacher. I was not gonna be a teacher, and then I was a teacher. And so I worked with a lot of young people before taking on this job, and I saw the stress that they had under there and their unwillingness or inability because they hadn't built the strength to try new things and make mistakes. So being able to take that journey now in school before it's the job and support them and get them to have that shift to, okay, what's the path to success through this kind of practice is really powerful.
So for me, it's more about kids are allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to mess up. They're allowed to maybe not do their best, and that's okay, knowing that it's practice. And the thing with practice is we're still giving feedback on the practice. Even though it's practice and even though it might not count, we're still giving feedback on it. They're still learning from it. If they make mistakes on the practice, it's okay. If they goof up on the practice, it's okay. I taught for 18 years at Moraine. So I was at Moraine for a long time teaching the little kids where mistakes are aplenty. And then they come up here to middle school where, oh my gosh, it's middle school. Oh my gosh, I have to be perfect. Oh my gosh, this is it. That's what I've been training for. And they make mistakes, and it's okay. And when they make mistakes on those practice assignments, it's gonna be okay. And for them to see that and feel that and own that, it's a really big deal for them.
Having worked in previous districts and previous practices, I always found that kids were just doing homework just to get it done. You know, they're doing in other classes, they're just rushing, they're copying off each other, and just making it practice just relieves that stress. Also, giving them reassessment, it relieves that stress. There's not as much pressure. They're not focused on getting that grade. They're focused on learning.
And I think just from a parent perspective of a daughter who was here when she was in 8th grade, and then she moved to a different district when she was in high school. That growth mindset piece is so important. She experienced in another district the punitive, you get a 0, you're late with an assignment and it tanked her grade. And it was very stressful, very anxiety producing. Where here, it's okay, you got a 0, you didn't get it in that day, but wait, she recognized that she should have gotten it in and had it done and could have turned it in, but didn't. That second chance wasn't there. And it really affected her, I think, as a learner.
So with assessments and reassessments, I think it's great to have that reassessment for the kids. We all have our off days, and unfortunately, our students may have their off day on one of those assessments, and they may not do as well as they thought they would. So giving them that reassessment option to get that score that they wanted is a really lucky thing for them and takes off a lot of pressure.
Regarding the fact that you can make mistakes on the practices and it doesn't affect your grade, that takes a lot of pressure off of the students' shoulders. And it doesn't give too much pressure, but if you're serious about getting like really good grades, you might want to do the practices to review your stuff before assessments and stuff, so you don't have to reassess. Yeah.
Coming from a different school that like our grading was out of 100 and everything counted, I felt like also I had to be rushed to do all of my work, and like that practice really didn't count for me. It was just the fact of finishing it and not actually understanding. And here I know my grades don't just depend on if I finished it or not. It's actually if I learned something. And I know I also have like reassessment to know in case I didn't do my best, I can do it again and it won't count against me.
So I've been a part of Northville Public Schools since kindergarten, and I honestly feel that like in middle school, I have the best ability to make mistakes. Like I know that reassessments are here, and I feel that I personally have something to fall back on compared to like elementary school. However, like if you do the practices and all your work, I do feel that like if you try your hardest and it doesn't work out in the end, there's always still reassessments for you to lean back on.
Personally, I get really freaked out about assessments and everything, and I strive to do my best always, even if it's the tiniest reassessment, even if it's weighted like 11 times. But when I get my grade back, sometimes I get back a bad grade, and I'm like, oh my God, this is terrifying. But then I reassure myself, I'm like, okay, I can always reassess again. And I go home, I spend a few days relearning it, and I figure out like, oh, this is what I did wrong. And then I go back and I can get a better grade. And it really makes me feel a lot better because I'm so terrified all the time. And yeah.
Also, coming from another school, at my last school, we didn't have practices. We just had learning class, send you home, do a project, come back to school, and you were done. So here with the practices and me, I do them all because I like to learn. With that extra help and that extra time that the teachers take to also help you in class with the practices sometimes, I think it helps more so with your grade and also you learning.
So I have a unique perspective on this in particular. Most of the time, people who come in front of you as educators had like the best like school experience, and that's why they wanted to be in school. And like, you know, like I love that, right? That wasn't the case for me. And I can tell you every marking period, I would make new goals. And I would be like, I'm going to do it this time. It's going to happen for me. I would buy like new school supplies. Everybody needs a new folder. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, just struggling, having a family situation that wasn't always conducive to having support and those things. I would go 2 to 3 weeks into the marking period and I'm going to get a 0 that I'm never getting out of. And so I found ways to occupy my time. Sorry to all my middle school teachers, but I do think that we underestimate that penalty and what it does to a kid who can go through 12 years of school and be like, well, I'm not very smart, and then go into college and be like, oh, I guess I can do this, right? And I want every kid who comes to us, regardless of what they go home to or what they came to us with, the ability to know that they have something that no one else in the world has. And when we squash that over and over again, we lose that very unique perspective and those skills that our at-risk kids have.
Thank you. And I'll leave you with this. Some teachers feel justified penalizing students, despite the fact that no studies support the use of low grades as effective punishment. Punishment often leaves students feeling helpless about the possibility of improving and disenchanted from adults who say they support positive development and relationships, but whose actions are incongruent with that mission. Our next question: how accurately do you feel? Mr. Lawson's excited. How accurately do you feel that a student's grades reflect their knowledge and understanding? And for our students, do you feel like your grades are accurate, measures of what you know and can do?
I love this question. So 10 years ago, if you were to come to parent-teacher conferences and say, hey, my kid's got a B, why? I don't know, let me go get my grade book. Is it because they didn't do their practice, but got A's on the assessments, so now they're at a B? Or is it because they got A's on all their practices because they got help at home and then got C's on their tests and they got a B? Or is it because they got a B on their practice, a B on their assessments, and had a B average? All 3 of those kids had the same grade, but those 3 kids didn't demonstrate the same learning. And so for me, if you were to come sit in front of me now and say, hey, my kid's got a B, why is that? I could tell you without opening the grade book exactly why your child has a B in my class. And by using these rubrics, by using the 8-point scale, it's also not punitive. If you have a bad day, that's okay. But my grades for the first time in the last 6 years actually demonstrate learning, not compliance. Great, you turned in all of your work. But, like for me, if you sat here and showed me how to change a carburetor, is that a thing? Okay, yeah. And then you said, hey, go do it on your own. Guess what? I couldn't. So, honest to goodness, my grades really, truly understand a student's knowledge and learning. And it is the greatest thing I think I have done educationally as a teacher. Those grades actually make sense, and I believe really do demonstrate that learning.
I would echo what Jen said, but I would also add, we have also leveled assessments. So rather than just counting up how many did the student get right, we now know that at this level, they're demonstrating proficiency. But what if they answered these questions at this level up here? Well, now we know they are above proficient. And if we give them some super challenging questions, now we know these are 7, 8 level questions. So we can really take a look at, when you talk about how accurate are these grades, much more so.
Yeah, I'll echo both of them, but I think what's also so magical about this is we can now have the conversation with a kid what it takes to move up a level, because it's not just about getting those points on the homework. It's a conversation about, okay, so right now we are achieving at a 4 level. Let's build the bridge to that 5 level, and then that 6 level, and that 7 level, and that 8 level. And it also gives the teacher an opportunity that if there's a misstep on a kid, we can catch it right away, right away. this is not a kid that gives me a 3-level work. What's going on? And then I can go check in with that kid and make sure first that kid's okay, because I care about that kid. And then figuring out what happened there that we had a misstep. So it's about finding that path forward, but also catching the kids right away that might need some extra support.
And it isn't a grade per se for me. It's a level of understanding. So for me, this question kind of took me off guard. Like, wait a second, it's not a grade. It's a level. We had parent teacher conferences last week, and I sat down with a parent, and you tell them their child's grade because you think that's what they want to hear. So I said, okay, your son has a B, and the mom stopped me and she said, wait, a B? What number is that? What number is that? And I was like, well, that's a 5. And she said, okay, he's proficient. Okay, we're good. And I was like, all right, okay, yep, okay, all right. And we were able to talk from there. How could we maybe get that 5 to a 6? What's the difference between a 5 and a 6? That's a really detailed level of understanding. I wouldn't have had that conversation if we were talking about an 84%. How do we get from an 84 to an 88? Those conversations don't exist, but a level 5 to a level 6 does. That was kind of like a moment for me.
So using 100% scale, parent-teacher conferences were really difficult because I get that parent like, well, how can my kid improve when they got a C? And I'd be like, well, they circled the wrong bubble on this multiple choice test and they got these problems wrong. So if they would have got those problems right, then they'd get a better grade. Now I can look at their assessments and, according to the rubric, I'm just like, well, in this topic, they're proficient, and this topic, they're proficient, and they've met my expectations. Instead of saying, well, they got 78 out of 100 on this test, so they got some problems wrong, so they probably should got those problems right.
And I do like the levels of understanding. I think especially in the class I teach, individuals and societies, it's that depth of understanding, and can they make connections? So that level 7-8 is, are they making connections to other lessons that they've had? Are they making connections between concepts? And you can talk to kids and give examples and show examples of what those levels are, so they have an idea of what that looks like. So it definitely opens the conversation to improved learning.
So I do 100% believe that the grades definitely are accurate and reflect of what the student's knowledge is and what it accurately is in that real time. Not what they knew in September, not what they learned 2 weeks ago and they've been practicing that concept. It's what they actually know right now. And so I think that's really beneficial too for the students, that they know where they're at, not where the medium of where they were in the last 3 months. It's where they're at.
The students of this school, they all might have different priorities. Like they might play different sports, have other activities, such and such. Depending on how serious they are about the school, they might get different grades. But if they get like a 5 or a 6, you can, if you want to get your grade higher, you can either talk to your teacher or your counselor, and they will help you get your grade up, or talk to you about what kind of methods you can use to get it up.
I feel like my grades are really accurate. And like this morning, I was talking to my individuals and societies teacher, Mr. Hart, and he was going over what I actually missed during the test. And I actually knew like what I needed to focus on. It wasn't just like, you just got that question wrong. I knew the like level I needed to focus on. And like last year, I wouldn't be able to know that, where all my parents knew was that I got a 98. Like they didn't know, oh, she's doing well, like she's on this level.
I do believe that my grades accurately represent what I know, because what I do is when an assessment is assigned, I review all the rubrics and I see what is the requirement for each and every score. Then I perform to the best of my ability, and I do feel that my teachers, all of my teachers, recognize that. Every single one of my middle school teachers are so loving and caring, and even when like I do something wrong and I'm not sure, all of my teachers are so nice and they allow me to. I have loving and caring conversation with them, and they are willingly able to explain to me what I did wrong, and they teach me how to, over time, relearn what I can do and help get my grade up if I do something bad on a test.
I feel that my grades aren't only accurate measures of what I know and can do, but accurate measures of how much work I put into something. Because I know I have a math test next week, and I'm going to study for that whole week because I don't understand any of this. And then by the next week, I'm like, okay, I understand this. I can do it. And I get a good grade. But then I might have like a history test tomorrow, and I'm like, meh. But then I get a bad grade on it. And I'm like, okay, that's probably why, because I didn't put the work into it. And so your grades show what you know and what you can do. You can't just expect to get a good grade. It really shows you what you know.
I've recently encountered something like this within one of my classes. So basically, all of our hours that day, the teacher let us know that all of our hours, we got some different scores. And she explained that all of us were like proficient, but like certain spots that she thought that she failed as a teacher at. But then she looked again further and noticed that we were all proficient. So she taught us a certain part of this test, but the rest of it we didn't know. So we had to go back, do some more learning. But then she just ended up giving us a grade based off of what we got. If it impacted our grade, then it went higher. But if it wasn't good, it didn't impact our grade, take us any lower.
I look at this through, I'm the MTSS coordinator here at Hillside, and we do quarterly data digs. And one thing that's become very clear is that when we sit down as a support intervention team group, when we look at grades, it's no longer, okay, so this student is failing this class. Okay, I wonder if it's homework. Is it test grades? Is it compliance? Is it attendance? And so we know when we're looking through those scores and we're able to really target our interventions because the teachers do know where that level of understanding is. And it's not just like, well, let's try this intervention. We'll throw something against the wall and we'll see if it works, which is the system that we've been given. But these practices, not only do they have benefits for teachers and parents and kids, but also these systems that we have in place to make sure that we're finding kids who are struggling with all kinds of different things, but we have that accuracy measure where we can pinpoint those interventions.
Thank you. And the goal with every grading practice is to ensure that parents receive the most accurate information regarding their children's achievement, and that they feel teachers build, maintain, and grow their children's confidence. If you remember earlier, that's true north. Accuracy, confidence. All right, so the same question for teachers and students, one that I think we've probably all, as professionals, heard as we talk about what we do here. What would you say to someone who said, if you don't grade it, students won't do it?
I grade everything. Even the practice is graded. There's feedback for that. So we do grade everything. Now, those things may not count in the overall grade, but in order for students to grow, they need that feedback. They need those grades. They need, here's how you did, here's how you can improve. And with this new practice, I have students who don't do the practice? Yep. Is it any different than it was 10 years ago? No. Those kids know they need to put the work in to do well. And I tell the students, I'm like, look, if you're not going to do the homework, odds are you're not going to understand the material and do well on the assessment. So if you don't grade it, students won't do it. We all grade everything. It's just how that feedback is given and what counts towards that final grade.
So that has not been my experience, that kids won't do the work if it's not graded. As Jen said, we do review it and give feedback, but people want to succeed. They want to please. Everybody wants that. I don't believe any of us get out of bed in the morning and think, how how bad can I mess up today? And these kids are desiring of approval and success, and they want to please their parents and themselves. That's why it happens.
And I think the operative word here is feedback. It may appear as a grade, but it's really feedback. In our school, our teachers provide homework rubrics that tell you what a score might mean. We're putting notes and helping students understand the gaps in their knowledge. We provide a lot of feedback. And that feedback may not calculate into their final MyStar grade for the practice parts of it, but it all does build up, and it's the story we talk to our kids about. When a kid comes to me and says, "Hey, Mr. T, I'm not doing so well in this assessment," we look at the feedback that's come all along, and then we start there. And we try to fill in those holes, and we try to make sure that the kids get that true understanding. But a lot of times people look at the system and say, well, you're not going to give the kids feedback. That's not true. There's not a teacher in this circle that doesn't give feedback in some way, whether it's entered in Schoology or just on the piece of paper that we turn back.
I agree with what everybody said. It's not it's not if you don't grade it, we're all providing feedback on if it's worth it to assign it, if it's worth it for these guys to spend time on it, then it's worth it for me to provide feedback on it. School should not be busy worksheets for the sake of classroom management. If it's worth it enough for me to give it to you guys to do, to spend your 48 minutes on, those precious 48 minutes I have you guys for, then I am going to provide feedback on it. And like everybody said, it might not go into the grade and MyStar, but it's going to be feedback that will help you get better.
With all the many books I've read, external pressure does not increase intrinsic motivation. It never has, never will. I've done similar schools, my past two schools in 2009 and 2013, both schools where we did not count homework towards the final grade. And guess what? The kids who didn't do homework when it counted towards the grade, they still didn't do homework when it didn't count. The kids who did homework when it counted towards the grade still did the homework, when it didn't count. So it really doesn't make a difference when it comes to, kids won't do it if it's not graded. If they have that intrinsic motivation, they'll do it. If they don't, they won't. And external pressure will not have any bit of influence on that.
And I think the purpose of a grade, if you give it to the kids, is they're learning from this and you're doing this to learn. And if you just present it that way, then they'll do it because they need to learn it. So that's a big thing for me. I know one of my big pet peeves is practice doesn't count. It counts because you're learning, and it's the learning that counts. It's not the points that count.
And I'll just kind of echo everything my colleagues have already said, but it's really, everything does get graded, at least in my room, the practice still gets graded, but it's really more about the feedback and pushing them into their final assessment of where they can improve and where they should focus on to really get them that assessment grade that they're looking for, so.
All the teachers, they will grade it if you do it. So if you don't do it, then you're not really, if you don't do it, you're not really trying to, okay, practices. They are things that are required to do for reassessments. If you don't do your practices, you cannot reassess. But if you do good on your first assessment, you don't have to reassess. So if you get a bad grade on a practice, that doesn't do anything to your grade. And
I feel like it's better to do it even though it's not counted, because it's that extra step that you actually know you're ready for the assessment and you're not like, oh yeah, I know it, I can go into this. And even if you do get a bad grade on the practice, it doesn't count, like Evan said. But if you didn't do the practice and you get a bad grade on your assessment, you can't reassess again and you can't show what you've actually learned just because you didn't do the practice. And there are some people that don't do the practice because it's not counted and they just don't want to do it. But most people want to actually do the practice because they want to know they have that extra step of I can reassess and I know everything I've learned.
So I do feel that if you're a new student at middle school, that when they learn that teachers don't grade practices, I do feel that some students don't do the practice work. But then again, I do think that soon after they realize that that's not the way to go. If they don't do their practice works, then it's probably they would probably get a bad grade on their test, because practice is a way to demonstrate your learning of your teacher's lessons. And also practices give you the ability to reassess. So, and I also have a brother in high school. His name's Arjun. He's a junior. And he also taught me that practice work, it counts in high school. So I feel like that it's a good habit to start getting into, that do your practice work because it counts in high school.
If someone were to come up to me and said, if you don't grade it, students won't do it, I'd probably say, yeah, some students wouldn't do it. But that some is so tiny, because people who want to do the practices, they do it. People who know they're going to need to reassess, they do it. People who know they're just going to have to study more if they don't do the practices, they're going to do it. So really, some students won't do it, but that's a tiny, tiny amount of students, because there's reasons to do it.
Let me just say, I like the word practice because at my last school, it was homework and it counted towards a grade. But also with that counting towards your grade at my last school, I would find that more students did the homework, but it was lack of turning it in because it was no communication with the teacher and the student, no feedback, no letting the student know what they got wrong. It was just you turn it in, impacts your grade, and that's it. Here, I feel like that it's more communication with the feedback and the adding on. So say, for instance, like a teacher, if you get something wrong, the teachers, they're going to sit the whole class down and go over what majority of the students got wrong. Then they'll probably come to the table and help you with that, whatever you got wrong. And I think the feedback is really what helps for the kids to learn more and makes it easier for us to get better grades on tests.
Yeah, and I would say I agree with everybody here, first of all, but with the kids, I think it would be those same kids, because those situations that kids are up against, or let's say that they're really great at social studies, but math is a challenge, and I know I'm going to need to do my practice there, but I can remember everything from history and I'm good. And it gives kids that opportunity to know themselves and to make those decisions about being a learner without having somebody always attaching it to something external. So I also want to say, if it's not relevant, students won't do it. And sometimes a lack of relevance tries to get glossed over with, a compliance thing like grading.
Many teachers resist the idea of not grading practice assignments because they believe if they don't grade it, students won't do it. This unfortunate view suggests students have no inherent interest in learning and reduces the school experience to an exercise of point acquisition. And it assumes that what teachers ask students to do for homework is not worth doing unless they get something tangible out of it, like points. So you've heard from teachers, you've heard from students, you've seen my little quotes, but the data speaks. So we have 3 secondary buildings. I'd say that we are unique in our approach to practice work and what we count for a final grade and what we don't. So what does our data say? As of Thursday, when you look at every grade in every building, look at the average class grade, pretty much the same. When you look at the number of missing and 0 assignments per student per course, pretty much the same. So our kids get feedback, they get help preparing for assessments, they don't get points, and that practice work doesn't impact their grades, and they do it anyway. Powerful. All right, the impact on mental health. So thinking about these grading practices for our teachers, how does it impact your workload and your stress level? And for our kids, how do these practices, reassessment, not grading practice, how does it impact your stress level about school?
Well, I think for me, the big impact before, when I was grading practice, students were, I mean, my goodness, if my students could get 100% on their practice every single time they did it, I should be making billions of dollars. But it's practice. And so these kids are supposed to make mistakes. And I think it kind of relieves their stress that, okay, I didn't understand this. I can go talk to Mrs. Lawson. I can figure this out. But it also relieves my stress too, because I know kids are coming to me and asking for help. They're no longer, all right, I'm just going to change the answers here. So I got 100% on this assessment. And then like, gosh, why are my kids not doing well on their assessments? So for me, it's building those relationships with those kids. And it's just, it really has reduced that stress. And those kids aren't coming to me in tears. I had a game last night and I couldn't finish my homework. I'm like, oh my God, gosh, to me, I think it's made me a better teacher. I think it's made me a better listener. And I think it's really empowered me to make a difference for these kids.
So I teach academic resource, and these kids are high achieving, highly competitive, and they put a lot of stress on themselves. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. And I think that these grading practices, especially the ability to reassess, helps reduce that stress, as Rhea mentioned earlier, and Hayden. The fact that they can breathe for a little bit, know that there is another opportunity, is everything for these kids.
Let's be real. We have a lot of students. We have a lot of students. We have to grade a lot of students. So when I can do formative things and not worry about being absolutely perfect with my students, but get that data that I need so I can make sure we did not learn that very well. It's no longer impacting their grade. We're gonna fix that tomorrow. We're gonna fix that tomorrow. It's a powerful thing. And it puts a lot of stress off of me. And it also lets me have those conversations with kids. Maybe it's this table group didn't learn this thing because we might have had a little behavioral challenge that day. And I could go to that table group and I can say, hey, this isn't going to tank you. This isn't going to destroy your grade. It's okay. We make mistakes. We're 11, 10, 12, but we do need to learn this. And I can go to that table group and say, okay, we're going to learn this. We're going to have a reteach. Clearly something was going on in the back of my room of 32, right? And so it lets me have good conversations, not sad conversations. It helps me improve my own practice and really channel my energy to where it really, really matters, the teaching of my students, not the billions of grades.
So here's the thing, I said before, I provide feedback on almost everything. If it's worth it for me to assign it, I'm going to give the kids feedback on it. And it's kind of counterintuitive. You have 155 kids. I teach language and literature, which is one of the more heavy hitting core classes as far as volume goes. But here's the thing is with this way of grading, my workload and my stress level is like the lowest it's ever been, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? I mean, it's like, wait a second. You're grading essays. The kids are reading novels. They're responding in ways that they can have many different answers. Aren't you stressed out? Don't you have tons of papers to grade? Yeah, but we develop rubrics that are so specific, that are so student-based and student-led, that with these rubrics, it makes grading their work pretty easy, pretty quick, and the kids can see, okay, this is a 6, this is a 7, this is an 8. If I got a 6, here's what I can do to bring it to a 7, here's what I can do to bring it to an 8. So it allows me to grade quickly, it allows me to provide feedback without handwriting a whole bunch of stuff. It's there for me on the rubric. So believe it or not, my stress level, my workload level is okay. I know it. And I taught first grade. I taught fourth grade. Okay. And now I'm teaching sixth grade, and I'm kind of the happiest I've been, which I know, right? Right.
All right. So the traditional way of grading is, hey, if it's late, it's a 0. We're marking you down. You only get one shot at the test. And we did that because we need to prepare these kids for adulthood. We need to prepare these kids for high school. We need to prepare them for college. But we have to ask ourselves, why the heck are we doing this? These kids are like 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. They're still kids. They should be able to make mistakes. I used to be that teacher that said, hey, if your project's not on time, don't even bother turning it in, give it a 0. Well, my stress level increased because the kids' stress level increased and parents' stress level increased. Now kids, if they need an extra day, they just email me, Mr. Yu, can I get a couple more days? I'm like, yeah, no big deal. Just turn by Friday. Everybody's happy. It doesn't cause me any extra work. It's not extra papers to grade. Everybody's happy. I mean, these kids, you guys have so many things to do after school compared to me. When I, was done with school, I just went home, played some video games. Some of you guys have like 3 sports. You're traveling to St. Louis on the weekend for volleyball. You guys have very complicated lives. And I'd like to think that their history project is the most important thing in the world, but it's not. They might need a couple extra more days. So I think by doing this, everybody's much more happier, and I'm much more happier.
And I don't know, I think the practice piece not being graded, again, the feedback is given, yes. But I think it opens up the door for better feedback too. So me as a teacher, it allows for conversation and not, oh, here's your grade. And, the kid's like, oh, it's a C. I just got a C, whatever. But if it was, a conversation where, to me, if I'm looking at their work and talking and they got something wrong, we can talk about why. And so that idea of practice before you get to the actual assessment is so important. And that, to me, I'm not recording it down, I'm not writing the data down, but I'm having real conversations with kids about their learning. So that's probably the biggest impact that it's had on me. So I'm one of the teachers who is lucky enough to have quite a lot of students since I'm art. I have a rotating class, so I see more than 300 students. So you would assume I have a lot to grade, which is true. But with practice work not counting towards their final grades, I'm able to give them a general ballpark of where they are at currently in my class. And then it gives me more time to go and see their projects in real time as they're working and give them feedback that way. So it really helps with my workload and my stress level. And then really it's just, I like to write a lot of feedback on all their final projects or final assessments, but really my stress loads are much lower than you would assume with over 300 pieces to grade.
Okay. No, I really think it depends on the teacher, because sometimes teachers will have assignments that usually count as practices, but it's required for you to do other assignments. Like language and literature, I have to finish an outline to start an essay. And the outline would probably be practice grade. The essay would be the assessment. But the outline is required, so that's a little stressful. Personally, I overthink a lot, so it might take me a little bit of time to finish something, but it's not that bad.
Coming here has really lowered my stress level because last year at my old school, all of my practice and homework counted and everything, and I play 3 sports at the same time. So I would be going right from school to my sport and then trying to get my homework done. And I realized I would be getting like a A- on that if I didn't finish that. So I had to prioritize things, and coming to Hillside has really helped me because I can go to practice and I still have time to do everything and get feedback from my teachers. And I know I'm not going to fail that class just because I had to go to like a swim meet.
Aside from my academic life, I have like a lot of activities after school. I have like one basically every day, and that sometimes includes two. I have 12 plus hours of gymnastics every week, and I have dance sometimes. And sometimes I don't even get home until 9:30 at night, which happens quite often. And honestly, having 7 classes a day is hard, but the fact that I know that my teachers understand my situation and allow me to like have a couple extra days to work on my practice work or my assessments, it lowers my stress level a lot because I know that like my teachers aren't strict and they're not even though like assessments have strict deadlines, they do understand my situation and they do allow me to be able to perform to the best of my ability with an equal amount of time as others.
So specifically about not grading practice, for practice, I'm more stressed about getting it all done before it's due. But then for not grading it, it doesn't give me any stress because I'll come across a question in the homework and I'll be like, I have no idea how to do this. And then I'm like, okay, well, I better just try. I'll just see what I can do, see what feels right, see what I think it might be. And if it was graded, I'm pretty sure I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't figure this out. What am I going to do? I'm freaking out right now. But it's not graded.
I really think with all our amazing teachers that it makes it easier on us because our teachers are more so understanding and they understand all of our situations. They hear us out. If we need extra time, they will give us extra time. And I would really say that the work isn't really too hard, but there is sometimes where kids might want to go more in depth with things, study more things, or go above and beyond with the project. And if they give you extended time for that, I think that's a reasonable thing. But if you have the time at home and you're just not using your time the way that you should be, because 60 minutes an hour throughout the whole day, I mean, you really get 24 not even 24, 12 hours a day to do really whatever you want to do, and the rest is pretty much sleep. And I think you should prioritize your 12 hours a day and organize your schedule. Make sure you have your day planned out and really make sure you let academics not get in the way of anything else because you really want to have good grades.
Leon, I'm going to have you do a conference call with my daughter in about 5 minutes. So just hold right there. No, this one is like something that I really wanted to speak to because I think there is, being a classroom teacher who did not use these practices, I moved into some of them over time as I learned more. I was really kind of like, what is this going to do, right? Like nobody wants to be a teacher anymore. Teachers are like, you know what? I'm out of here, right? Those work conditions do really matter. And I think we have to be careful not to try to change a system on the backs of our teachers. That's not fair. And so I think the district can look at this, and if we really prioritize having these welcoming, safe environments where learning is, the key, we can find ways to get, the teachers that little bit of extra help. If it's having another teacher give the reassessment during, another class period or whatever it happens to be, but working around those things so we're not trying to innovate or change things on the backs of just one group, especially in the time we're in right now.
And procedures that permitted or perhaps even encouraged some students to give up in hopelessness and to stop trying must now be replaced by others that promote hope and continuous effort. In short, the entire emotional environment surrounding the prospect of being evaluated must change. Accruing points versus showing learning. So for teachers, how do students get better grades in your class? And how do you explain that to them and their parents? And for students, how often do you or other students ask for more points, and how do teachers respond?
I no longer have students point grubbing. Like I said, square feet, and it should have been meters squared. Can I have that half a point back? And that's gone. They're not grubbing for those half a point here, half a point there. They're really focused on, okay, I didn't understand how I did this. Couldn't you help me? And students aren't afraid to make those mistakes on their homework, like you alluded to, like, okay, I didn't understand this. Well, you know what? 10 years ago, that's going to knock your grade down. Now I have kids that aren't afraid to come to me and ask for help and say, you know what? I just didn't get this. They're not asking for, how can I get 3 more points? They're now asking me, what did I do wrong? And how can I learn this? Can you show me what to do, as opposed to, can I have extra credit for bringing in Kleenex? I'll give you a Raider Pride card for that box of Kleenex. But it's really, the students are focused on the learning now, not the points. And I really feel like that's a huge shift than what I did 10 years ago.
So my students always want to know, what does an 8 look like? So I provide samples for them. This is an 8, and we'll have conversations. Well, what does a 6 look like? I have a couple of assignments. One, the CCC, anyways, it's a compare, contrast, critique, and it will actually give them an opportunity to say, if you want an 8, this is what I need to see from you. And if you show me this, we're now at the 6th level. And it does that for each level. With a little practice, students at Hillside should be able to start predicting their grade before they ever turn in their work. Grading shouldn't be a surprise.
When a kid comes up to me and asks me what they can do to get a better grade, it's have a conversation with me. During every assessment window, every project they work on, I've got a little sign-up sheet by my desk. They have the ability to line up and ask for feedback, but it's have a conversation with me. Because I want to instill that in a skill in the kids young, that you have to have the confidence to go up to whomever's overseeing you and ask for feedback. So it's about feedback, asking for feedback before you turn it in, respecting the feedback when you get it after you turn it in, and if you need to reassess, start with the feedback. When parents come and ask me, what can my kid do better? It's, again, talk to me. A big thing that we do in this school is about those conversations we're building with kids. It's not about this is 97%. It's about what this actually is and building that confidence.
And 2, I think we all use rubrics that are pretty detailed. The kids can see, this is why I got a 6. This is what I need to get a 7. This is what I need to get an 8. And if those rubrics are unclear, if the language is ambiguous, if they have questions, because I teach language and literature, oftentimes I'll conference with kids. Well, you might need a writing conference. And I provide, they can come see me during seminar, they can come see me during lunch, they can come see me before school, they can come see me after school. I'm really flexible, but with kind of the art of reading and writing, sometimes it does require a conference. Let's look at your draft. Let's look at your final copy. Do you see what I see? This is how we can get from a 6 to a 7. This is how we can get from a 4 to a 5. And like Guy said too, it's the kids being able to advocate for themselves. Mrs. Pannon, I think I need a writing conference. I think I need to sit down with you. I don't really see what I did wrong here. And they really do like that one-on-one time. They really enjoy that. Sitting next to a teacher, talking, when we talk to them like they're an adult, they appreciate that. It builds our relationship, and the grade kind of shifts to the side, and we're just really, really building a solid relationship.
All right, from day one, I let my students know I don't want the correct answer. I want your answer. I don't want Google's version of history or the textbook's version of history. I want Eben's version of history. I want Hayden's version of history. And that's how you get a good grade in my class.
I'll just echo whatever everybody else said with the rubrics and the conversations, that's how you get a better grade. And I agree, there's no points. And kids aren't asking about points. How do I get an extra point on this? Or no questions of extra credit at all, because they know what they need to do to get the highest level of credit. So.
So I never really get this question. It's more of how can I improve on my artwork? And then also to kind of echo too, all my students self-assess before they turn in every project, and 99% of them give themselves the same grade that I will be giving them. They are very self-aware of where they stand and their knowledge and their concepts.
I really like the teachers here, but I almost never ask them for help or anything. Because usually I would try to figure it out on my own, try to research it with my own, just whatever I can find, just Google, whatever. But teachers, tell me if I'm wrong. The most common question you get asked is, may I go use the bathroom?
I've never actually asked for extra credit here, but I know last year I would, even if I got 100, because it was that strive for perfection, even if you had 100, because sometimes teachers would be lenient and like tell you you could get extra credit. But I know here, like even before I have the rubric and everything, and even with my brother Naveen, we both look over our stuff and peer edit, and like we know what level we'll be on together if we look over our stuff.
So I'm a big worrier. Like all of my teachers know this. Like I worry about everything. I go down to the most detailed explanation about this. And like in my earlier years of middle school, I do believe that like I was more worried than I am now because I was so scared of middle school. I had no idea what to do. But like now I understand like the different rubrics and like what I'm trying to strive for. And then even if I don't do well on a test, like I'd still go up to my teachers and I explain to them my situation. And then they do like reteach me the concept if I need it, or like help me with like those holes that I need to fill. But the teachers are really kind with helping me, and I'm grateful that they're my middle school teachers.
When I get a grade that I didn't think I would get, and I'm surprised about it, if I can't figure it out myself, I'm always going to go to a teacher and ask, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? What can I do next time? And I remember in the beginning of the year, I had a history project, and I worked so hard on this history project, and I got a 7 on it. And I was like, whoa, I do not think I got this grade. So I go up to Mr. Uriel, and I say, hey, why did I get a 7? And you go, what do you think you deserve? And I said, well, I think I deserve an 8 because of A, B, C. And Mr. Uriel goes, I think you also deserve an 8. And then he gave me an 8. But yeah.
I believe that if you don't ask for more points, I mean, you don't really ask for more points here. You more so are focused on the learning, because when you take a test, I'm one of those kids, I rarely check my grades. Like I'll check my grades the month after. I just feel like it. But I always know I'm going to have good grades because of the feedback that the teachers give you verbally and on paper. And I really think that helps me because I've never asked for more points or anything, but like there's certain things that you might do that the teachers might give you extra points for. So like say for instance, you choose a harder category or you go in depth with a topic. I would say that's something that deserves extra points, but other than that, I really never asked for extra points.
So for me, in my role here, I get to supervise recess. I know you're all jealous, but I get to do that, and I get to also supervise buses. And the magic of that is I get to hear all the conversations. I know all the things about all the things, right? And I love hearing kids go, did you see that new and challenging? Like when they're talking about that 7-8, I hear these things as I'm walking up and down the halls or in recess. And I think it's so refreshing to hear kids talking to each other about learning. And they're talking about assessment, and like, we don't want them to be comparing and those kind of things. But I also think that they're talking about their learning, and how often do kids get a chance to engage in that and really talk about those assessments and just learning in general in that way?
When teachers assign a point value to simply turning in evidence of learning or put a mark or number on everything students do, the message sent to students is clear. Success lies in the quantity of points earned. Any intended message about valuing the quality of learning is blurred. All right, teachers. Oh, I thought I changed that. The impact piece. If I asked you to go back, to return to more traditional assessment practices, count everything, 100-point scale, one and done assessment, how would you respond? And students, if we eliminated reassessment and counted everything, counted all the practice, how would that affect you?
I quit. Knowing what I know now, it would feel unethical.
I would figure a way around it. I would figure around a way around it.
Find a loophole. The one and done assessment is what gets me. That would stress me out. That would really, really stress me out, especially being in middle school. We all have bad days. We all need some grace. We all make mistakes. The one and done assessment just makes my blood pressure and it makes my hands sweat. I don't like that at all.
Having a computer grade my tests for me, that was easy and that's tempting to go back to, but no, I'd rather do this. I mean, I came from a high stakes charter school where kids were only numbers as in test scores and money, and they had very high pressure, high stakes where it's one and done, you're just a number, and I would never ever go back to that. I love it here.
I would retire. I would find the loophole to not do that.
What's the question? If tomorrow we just switch back to the 100-point scale, my brain would just shut off. It would just go boom. We have more work to do and it counts towards my grade. So.
Coming from this exact thing from my old school, I felt like if I got 1B, I thought my whole life was over. I thought I wasn't even going to get into college. And that's what my parents thought too. Because like if I'm not an A student, then they have no faith in me. So like if I did not have, I have only used reassessment like maybe like 3 times over the year, but it's really helped me get to that level I really want to be at.
If Mr. Jones just randomly walked into the lunchroom for 8th graders and just told all the 8th graders, guess what? We have one and done assessments, 100-point scales, and we count all the practice tests, I think I would faint and I wouldn't wake up until the end of the year. But then again, like I do know that the high school has like exactly like this scenario. So gotta get ready for that.
Well, for me, immediately my grades would tank. And then because my grades would tank, I'd start to hate school. And if I'd have to go to school for 8 hours a day, I'd be so mad because I hate school now. And I would just become a completely different person because of it.
I've never used a reassessment day of my life, but I'm pretty sure if that was to happen, I would probably need way more reassessments. And with the no reassessments, I'll probably have to move.
Well, Leon, I have the same response. I would go to a school and bring this with myself there to implement.
Well, and I spoiled the surprise because it didn't pop up when I wanted it to. But we take children who come to school with innate interest in learning and growing, and we teach them that those things are only a means to the ultimate end. Lots of points. And maybe I'll ask a follow-up question to Joyce. When you taught kindergarten and first grade, how many times when you gave a kid something to do, did they say, about how many points is it worth? Never. We drill that into them, and we don't have to. All right, parent response as we near the end here. Teachers, what, if any, parent concerns and feedback have you heard about these practices, and how do you respond? And students, what feedback have you received from your parents about these things?
The first year I switched, I think I had a few parent questions. You know, my kid has to put a lot of effort into their homework. Why shouldn't it count? And, you know, I go back to the carburetor story. If I have to sit down and you've got to show me 42 ways to fix a carburetor and I still can't do it, I haven't learned it. But I haven't really had any concerns. I've had a lot of positive feedback because for the first time in the last 7 years, I can tell parents and students exactly what level their student is at, how they can improve, and what they can do to learn. And so I really feel like at this point, it's all good.
I, if anything, get parental relief at the fact that there is reassessment and their kids have these opportunities.
Yeah, I really don't get parent concerns. Usually parents are just confused at the beginning. I mean, I teach sixth grade and we have to spend a lot of time educating them about what the system is. But once they understand it, then it's all positive feedback. It's all, okay, how do I get my kid to grow? We have a new talk about not these points, about what's best for my kid. So the confusion turns into oh, okay.
Okay, I'm going to take my teacher hat off and put my parent hat on. I have an 8th grader here at Hillside and I have a 5th grader at Ammerman. So I live here, I work here. I am a holder of all the stakes. Right. So my 5th grader, he got his report card today, and on his report card was 3s and 2s and 1s. Makes perfect sense. He'll come up here to Hillside, and rather a 3, a 2, or a 1, it'll be 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's intuitive. It transfers really nicely from elementary to middle school. It's not like they go from letter grades in elementary school to the 8-point scale in middle school. It's intuitive and it works and it flows and it's easy. My 8th grader here, when he was in 6th grade, I want to say he reassessed maybe a dozen times, maybe. When he was in 7th grade, he reassessed a handful of times. He's about to wrap up 8th grade, he's reassessed once. So they start to, that safety net, that reassessment safety net kind of dissolves on its own as they go through 6, 7, 8. And it works. And like Melissa said, you know, she's at the bus line, she's at the lunchroom, I'm at all the mom things, I hear it all. The sports, the campfires, the school plays, the whatever it might be, I am there with my ears wide open and I hear nothing but positive. I think parents get it.
So with any change, it's always difficult, any transition. Like we're used to the traditional letter grades because, you know, that's what we all grew up with. And, you know, a few years ago, like I always get parents, so like, what letter is that a B? That 5 is, you know, is that, what letter grade is it? Like, it's not a letter grade, it's a number. So, but we don't get that anymore. And it's, you know, I get much more positive feedback instead of like, why are you guys using numbers instead of letters? So everything seems to be much more positive now.
Yeah, and I feel like by the time they've gone through 6th grade, they're in 7th grade, parents understand the system, and so there's not really any concerns or feedback negatively that I've heard. I mean, again, they are glad about reassessment. You know, they may ask about that every so often, but other than that, nothing. So this is only my 3rd year here, and so I wasn't here when we transferred over to this system, but since being here, I have only heard positive things. I've never had really any negative feedback or parent concerns with our scale.
My mom and dad are always really encouraging, and they will always try to help me with my schoolwork, but as I said, I tend to research it by myself and do stuff. But my mom at home, she always is more of the one that checks on my grades. So I talk to her a lot, and Sometimes positive, sometimes negative. It's really nice. I love my mom, love my dad back there. And yeah, they've just been really helpful my whole life.
My parents having a sixth grader and an eighth grader that's new to Hillside was kind of new to them, but once they got used to it, they were really happy about it because like I wasn't going home stressed, yelling about how much homework I had to do, and my mom checks my grades like every single day, which is kind of, well, it's good because I know what I need to do, but she's like, oh, did you do this practice? Like, oh, I know you don't have to, but like if you need help on it, I can help you, and she knows it's not graded, so if I didn't do it, she knows not to yell at me.
So when I get home off the bus and I have like a major test set that day and I like knock on my door and then my dad opens the door, he's like, "What'd you get on that test?" First thing he says to me, by the way. And then I say, "Oh, I got a 7 or an 8." And then he's like, "Out of 100?" Because by the way, I have a high school brother, so they're always used to that. But and then they're automatically like, "You need to reassess. You need to do this. You need to do more practice." And I'm like, "Calm down. It's just it's out of 8." And they were like, okay, but based on that, they are really fond of practice work and like not grading it because of like all of the extracurriculars that I do. And they are really fond of reassessments because if you do just have like an off day, then you can just always like relearn the concept and re-showcase your mastery.
My parents don't usually give me feedback on these practices, but sometimes I'll come home and my mom will be like, "Hey, I checked your grades and you have a 0 on this assignment." And I'll be like, "I know, I'm fixing it." Or then I'll come home and I'll be like, "Hey, by the way, I got a 3 on this assignment, but it's okay. I'm gonna reassess." But yeah, they seem pretty understanding.
Same thing also happened with me. One time I went home and my mom had checked my grades and saw that I had a 7. And she was like, "Did you get that out of 100?" And she was furious with me. She didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. And then in the morning, we sat down and I was late to school because it was a lot of yelling. So she spoke to me about it, and I had to, 'cause I was new to Hillside. I didn't understand what was going on either. I thought I did something horrible. And then next day, came to school, my mom emailed one of my teachers, and it was out of 8. So I got an A minus. So I would say.
Yeah, I would say as an administrator, parents are much more likely to reach out to the teacher and talk about the rubric as opposed to complain if they don't like something. So I think all of the clarity that comes through with the practices and how teachers are, doing what they do, the reassessment kind of deal that they give, those kind of things are all out there on Schoology, and parents and kids know them. So I'll put on my parent hat now, and I will say very clearly, I was worried about my daughter leaving Hillside and what, that would be like. She's a high stress kid, deals with anxiety, really cares about her grades. And, was the transition something? Yes, it was something. It's a thing, right? Like transition on each level is always a thing. There's always going to be something. But I think that the benefits that she got as a learner and as a human from being in a building that embraces these practices and really focuses on that, she'll carry that with her no matter where she goes.
And I'll leave you with, no parent will argue for inaccurate information or grading practices that induce anxiety. And I'll say, as principal, when we started these things, maybe one PTSA meeting in that 17, 18 year, I had one parent who went down the road of, Mr. Jones, there's no second chances in real life. And that was about 7 years ago. And now, really, the only concerns or complaints that I would get is if a student somehow lost access to reassessment. So now I think that coin has kind of flipped from that traditional thing of, got to teach them right to get it perfect the first time to, well, it would be nice if my kid had another chance. I agree. So I will leave you with a final thought. The most dangerous experiment we can conduct with our children is to keep schooling the same at a time when every other aspect of our society is dramatically changing. 1997. And I would wonder how many of our assessment practices, maybe not at Hillside, but elsewhere, look really similar to what they looked like in 1997. Thank you. And thank you to our kids, our teachers. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer.
Go ahead,
Let's
Kim,
go
yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Give me this. Just amazing. I almost don't know where to begin. I'm sorry that you don't transition right into high school with similar grading philosophy, although I know conversations are going on. I can tell you as a university professor, you will have grading experiences like this at the university level. This is standards-based, rubric-driven, very precise description of what the target is. How often do we put kids in situations where they have got to guess what they're shooting for? And, depending, the variability in your grading might just depend on, personal life issues. So I think that as much as of that we can get out of the calculation on how our students' academic success is awesome. And I'm so impressed with the progress. And you've been at this for 10 years?
This is year 8, I think.
Year 8. Then does it take that long? It's
No, I
kind of
don't think
like the
so.
we accelerate the change.
I think, as I look back on it, I think it was certainly, you kind of start with conversations and figuring out what's happening, and then you just kind of start layering those pieces on. And I would say, I am not the sorcerer who has figured all of these things out. I think it is all of the teachers who have figured out. Jen has been, along with Debbie, like one of the constants of figuring out, okay, we know what we want to do, but how do we make it work in MyStar? How do we make it work in Schoology? What does the number have to be? What button do you have to push? What do you have to do to make it function? And I think once you get teachers talking to teachers, it works. Yeah. And I think, as you heard from the staff, it doesn't create more work. It doesn't reduce accountability for our kids. We hear it in their answers. We see it in the data. So, I think it's a process, but I will also say I push softly, gently, but constantly. And now we're to the point where I've got at least 2 teachers who are going to quit if I make them go back the other way. But it's important for all the things we talked about with growth mindset and equity. And I don't know if it was maybe Debbie who said it, but knowingly advocating for things that are inaccurate and undermine confidence, it's an ethical breach. Yes. And I think once you get to that point and you see it as kind of a moral issue, whether it's 1997 or 2017 or whatever it is, we can do better. And we have.
So my last comment is, in my experience, we would maybe have, 10 English 101 teachers at, in a freshman class. Getting everybody on the same page in terms of just what are the criteria. So developing that rubric so we can be consistent across all of those sections of English 101. So I don't know, was there a lot of debate when you have multiple teachers? Yes.
I'm loud. Debate, yes, good debate. Not a bad debate. And I met with my Shannon Donich, who is my counterpart in algebra. And today at lunchtime, we sat down, we went through our assessments and said, okay, what are we looking for with these questions? What are we asking the students to do? How are we going to grade this? So if I took my test and gave it to Shannon, and Shannon gave her test and gave it to me, those kids are going to have the same scores. And it's nice to have that collaboration and to work together. It's the same thing with my Advanced 7. We sit down, we go over these assessments, we build them together, we grade them together so that everybody's grade is accurate. It's not like, oh, go give Mrs. Lawson her test, she's easy. No, we're all together, we work together, we collaborate, and that's the key, is that all of our grades are accurate. together.
And I would piggyback on that because I know that in our department, and I know that Bill offers this for whoever requests, we've been able to take a day or a half a day to work with the teachers in our department and say, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is what the rubric is, and compare work. So just being given that time to do that is valuable.
And I often will turn to the kids who see all the teachers and say, what do you like? What's the best of what you've seen, and show me how that looks. And I'll say, like, open your grades, let me see it, let me see these. And I try to incorporate new practices that way, that, just kind of the best of what's out there. We've got a lot of great teachers here with cool ideas.
And I steal from her constantly.
And I'll say one other thing too, just as I'm looking at the panel and thinking, just, in the last number of years, I hired Guy, Joyce, Mark, and Kelly, and they'll all tell you my interview questions are about mindset and asking these questions about assessment, because when the teacher says, I'll ask questions about reassessment. If the kid gets 100% on all the assessments and doesn't do a look at the homework, what do? And the teachers who say, I'd probably cut it in half. Maybe I'll give them a C or give them a 50. Okay, next. So when you hire for mindset, you get people who are open to it, who then speak to Jen and Karen and the people that are around and say, no, I believe, I just don't really know how to do it. Well, I've got teachers that can show you how to do it. But if you're not a believer, then you're in the wrong place.
English, and I'll go in there. Okay, they're going to do a writing assignment. I got ELA standards like integrated in my thing. What do they know? What should I focus in on? How can I support them in this? And even though we're different subjects, we can collaborate in that way.
That's awesome.
In supporting.
So across subjects and also across levels.
Yeah.
That's
Just today in science, I was talking to our science teacher. We both each think about landforms. We covered landforms first. So what do your kids know about landforms so we can build off of that?
So we were just talking about narratives today, because you're doing a narrative-ish writing for your facts. My students just finished narratives, so I was telling guys what they needed to work on and we should improve it through it. We talk to each other, we learn from each other. We are not, the rubrics we've written aren't chiseled in stone. We need to change them, we need to teach them. And we do that collectively because we talk to one another. More at that time.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
We have amazing teachers here at Hillside, and I can't even imagine what would happen if they had regular time to do that range finding, to do lesson studying, to do that work that they're finding, like ways to do it like this, and they really should have, be able to learn and grow as a professional.
You really do have something wonderful going on here. I'll tell you, I'm blown away as always. There's something about the middle schools and coming to the middle schools. Last year, I was really blown away by what you guys presented. It was mostly around inclusion. I was blown away by the math group at parent camp this year, by the math, the math platform that you guys piloted here, I believe. And it's not just a Hillside Meads Mill thing. It's actually at Meads Mill. There have been meetings where I've been literally moved to tears. And so there's something about the middle schools here that are super special. I think it should be required that parents serve on the school board. You learn so much. You should at least be required to have to come to the meetings, right? To be a parent in this community and have your kids, going and take advantage of the schools here. You should be required to go, and you should be required to go to parent camp. I mean, I've learned so much. And I've been just blown away by how the teams put students in front of us and what the students have to say and what they've, in the years, I think about, Beth, the presentation, the movie that you showed us. It was very early in my kind of time on the board here where it was a panel of high school students that were telling us about the pressures and the stresses that they felt and where they were feeling those pressures from. And we've had sessions on inclusion, and we've been blown away by those. This on grades, I think, is kind of like that next frontier, right? And I keep thinking of this phrase, sometimes leaders have to lead, right? The customer is not always right. My daughter, my daughter Casey, who some of you have had, actually corrected me. At some point I said, customer is always right. And she said, Dad, that's actually not right. Customers are always right in matters of taste, but they're just not always right. And sometimes leaders, where I'm going with this is, I've heard that phrase for a long time, but I never really knew what it meant until I ended up here on the school board. Sometimes leaders, like what you're doing here, have to lead in spite of, what people in the community might think. And when you started your presentation, I was sort of like, all right, what is Mr. Jones trying to sell us here, right? He's very hesitant about, what if we did this, right? Well, here's what the data says. Like, I feel like even though you have the slide around parents kind of buying into that, I think if you sat up here and said 8 years ago, parents, this is what we're going to do. Homework is not going to count toward your grade. There's going to be chances for reassessments, right? You'd hear a lot of, well, that's not the way it works in the real world, right? Or, I don't really care so much about learning. That's secondary. What I really want is them to stand out, to show colleges how they stand out, and to get as many points as possible, and to get all the points. And so you'd have probably had a harder sell on this if you just said straight, here's what I'm doing. And I think it's a little ingenious how you did this. 8 years ago, you started turning the wheels. And so I just think there's something really special about that, because the students get it. They get so much about grades and learning and inclusion and stress and pressures, and you see it every day and you get it. Parents don't. They're busy doing they don't have time to read the books that you've read. They don't have time to go to parent camp. They don't have time to come to these meetings. And I would imagine that'd be the one constituency that might be, the hardest one to pull along on this. And so I guess my question is, you answered it in the last set of slides, but you know what parents are like, right? You know what parents are like. I'm a parent. I know what that's like. How do we, I think they've sort of understood, I understand the grading scale now, but how do you make them understand that the underlying reason for doing this, how do you sell them on that without, they're not going to have time to sit through a 2-hour.
Question off of my paper.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
I just think there's so much great stuff going on here. How do you communicate it to the parents, right? Who, a lot of people move here because, look, I worked hard to come to Northville. I want my kids to go to the best university possible, and there's all that stress, and they're checking your grades on Schoology, and I do it all the time. If I see a 0 on a missing assignment or an assessment that's scored an 8, they're asking, and they want answers to those questions. And so I am just kind of circling around parents and how they feel about this, and how do we, and maybe not how they feel about it, but how can we tell them about this, right? What you've gone through. And I love this circle. This we've seen this at a few schools now, maybe half a dozen at this point. I just feel like this is an outgrowth of our RP work and community building, and this kind of context and forum is really awesome for bringing this kind of dialogue and letting us just watch it. But without parents being here to see this, how can we communicate this? I just think it's really important. It'd be inspiring to them. It's not just reassuring, but there's look at what we're doing here. This is really, I don't know, revolutionary stuff, even though you've been talking about it for 10, 20, 30 years, in the books and the things. And you've been grinding away at this for 8 years. I think there's a real story here that's beyond just, okay, I understand, the grading scale, and, a 3 means an 8 or whatever it is. But there's something else here that's kind of magical about, transforming what you're doing here. So I don't know if it's a question. It's just a thought.
An offer I'd make is to, Bill, if you could go back to that data slide, one of the things that I hear often when I talk about this is, yeah, but this is going to harm kids, or it's easier for, or it's, and data is convincing, but to your point, the human story is compelling. And how do we get that there? However, I think data can often be used to at least take a skeptic or a cynic and say, what else is there? And when I saw this data set, this is what did you say? This is from?
This is just from Thursday.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna add to your question, we've been talking about this, I don't know, as long as we've been here, about how do we start to bring this, and we've done presentations at parent camp, and we, last year, when our fifth graders came, we gave them folders that I'm sure made it all the way home to their parents, that had kind of some information about this, and some book recommendations along the lines of not specifically on grading, but more on helping your kid to develop this love of learning and this drive and on their own without constant external stimuli. So we do the fifth grade presentations, talk to the kids about it. We've toyed around with can we do transition day, but make all the parents go into the Raider Corral and learn about this? We're trying to figure out ways to do this. So if you guys have ideas, we would love to.
And I would say, you've gotten a lot of emails from me.
Yeah.
So I shout things to the heavens as much as I can. Our curriculum night that we have at the beginning of the year, that grading and understanding the process is at least a huge part of social studies one. I don't get to visit the other one, so I don't know if we're all maybe just saying all the same thing, but I know we spend a lot of time trying to educate around the grading system here. Being sixth grade teacher in Joyce, we're on the front lines of what is this? And every parent comes in thinking that the kids are going to be immediately in the normal 100 scale, and we're like, no, it's not much different, and it takes a lot of talk. It takes a lot of talk, a lot of repetitive talk. And I hope I'm not overwhelming with my emails, but we try to make it as blown up as we can and educational as we can, and then respond as questions pull in.
And I think you can't really substitute for that individual teacher advocacy, whether it's curriculum night or, the open houses when you have Jen Lawson who says, this is the way I used to do it, and I would never, ever go back. And this way is better. And let me tell you why. That's powerful for a parent, right? To hear your kid's teacher say, your kids are going to be just fine. You're going to get better information, more accurate information, and your kids are going to be great. And I'm going to zip back to this thing here for a second. Where are you? Here. How do you get better test scores? By not focusing on getting better test scores. And I think what you heard every teacher here say is not, man, I really try to raise grades, really try to bring grades up in my class. What you heard them talk about was learning. And what you heard the kids talk about, or, through the kids to say, Mrs. Lawson, I really don't understand this. Can you help me understand it better? Because if you just do one and done and the kid fails and you move on, well, that has an impact on your scores. So I think when you focus on authentic learning and you focus on improvement, parents get what they want. They get the grades, they get the scores, and I think we're really fortunate in this community that most of our kids do most of what we want most of the time. And we don't need to stick them with points and zeros and those. They're already compliant. Let's give them a break. Let them breathe a little bit and let some of that anxiety go when it comes to, practices and assessments. And they're 11 years old. This is not an adult life, but even still, right? College is kind of heading this way. When you say real life is not like that. I have a colleague in this building whose daughter was going to be a physical therapist. She studied to be a physical therapist. She took the test to be a physical therapist, and she failed. So what did she do? She went back and she studied more. Now, the cost of that, after you're through middle school and high school and college, is higher. You have to pay to take that test again. But if you are motivated to study and learn and grow and focus on those things that you didn't know, and you take the test again, and she passed, well, you're a physical therapist. And that's the kind of kid I want to send out, not the kid who says, well, I guess I blew that and I'm done for now. No, go back, do it again. And I think that's what we're teaching.
I
I just wanted to say openly that when we briefly discussed this amongst ourselves, that I have been a skeptic of the not practicing part, not counting, because of my concern about students not feeling motivated or feeling like their hard work counts. But hearing this conversation and seeing the data especially, I think as a school board is really eye-opening and very impactful for me. And then I'm also thinking as a parent, which obviously I'm both at the same time, I think maybe a parent's just experiencing it, right? Just a sixth grader coming in and living through it. Sometimes that's how you know it's going to be okay, is that you come out of it okay and you see what your kids go through. And like, I really loved your story about your sixth grader growing into it as an eighth grader and how they learned how they learn and what they need to do to get where they want to go. And to me, that's really impactful. And I think, Lindsay, for me, what I'm thinking about is that maybe the best way, honestly, to communicate it with parents is that they just have to do it. Just like a lot of things, right? I mean, my question will be for these students as they go into ninth grade, and I hear a lot of anxiety about it already building, how you're transitioning as you go into high school and how, and I just want to say to all of you, you have learned some amazing skills about yourselves and how you learn. That is going to be very powerful as you go into high school. Don't let the grading scale, that's not who you are, right? And take these skills that you have right here, right now, and utilize them. They will carry you very far for a long time. Lastly, I just wanted to say we've also had a lot of conversations about AI, and I really think a lot of the skills, especially when you use that quote from 1997, I think a lot of these skills that we're teaching, I mean, I hate to say this because who knows what's going to happen with AI, but right now, really bring the human element to learning, the relationships, the grit, figuring things out. That I know that's not the intent of it, but we really have noticed that bringing that human experience, that this is what that's really highlighting, even though I know that's not the goal of it, is to figure out how to be a human in the age of AI, but I think it really does empower people as we face these new challenges.
Well, and I think we have to move beyond, the traditional ways that we teach and assess, and that's where you then open the door for AI. Because if any teacher here, if the practice is free, you could tell the kid, yeah, go look at AI. But if you're worried that they're going to cheat or that they're going to take those, why would a kid cheat on his math homework? He doesn't get anything for it, other than not learning, which is going to show up later on. So I know you encourage photo math. I've seen in a lot of your classes, the answer key is posted. Everything is there, right? Do it first and then go and check. There really isn't an incentive to cheat and find those things because it's going to show up later on the assessment. And I think our kids said the same thing too, right? You do the practice because it's important. And Joy said, I gave it to you because it's important. And Ms. Provo said, when it's relevant and kids understand, oh no, that's valuable. That's why she wanted us to do it. And then I see the value. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to do it. If it's not, well, then they don't.
I think my practice grades, I'm rephrasing, the homework that I give my students to practice, I think it's more accurate now. As where before, when it counted, the kids are going to do whatever they can to get those points. And now that they know, all right, and I tell my kids, if you don't understand something, walk away, come back to it. If at that point you still don't get it, that's when you come see me, as opposed to, all right, I'm going to go look at the key, I'm going to get out, and I'm going to just try and get these answers. I now have more authentic work from my students that really can gear my teaching, as where before I'm like, oh, kids all got 100 on their homework. They all knew it. Surprise, assessment comes along, nobody got it.
Yeah.
And now the kids are like, and I was out the other day, I must have had 7 kids at my, Mrs. Lawson, you know what, can you explain this assignment? Because I'm pretty sure my answer's right, and I can't understand how Desmos got this answer. Well, it turns out Desmos was wrong. But they weren't afraid to come ask me, and they weren't afraid to make a mistake. and learn and question. And that's what I think this process, kids are not afraid to question. And I've even had students come up to me, you know, when you talk about when you went to Mr. Uriel, look, I think I should have earned this grade and here's why. And I may say, no, or yeah, you're right. And so it's allowing this discourse between student and parent and colleagues that we've never really had before. It's no longer about, did you get question 4 right? It's, how can we learn from that and move on? And those reassessments, if those students, especially in math, if they get one shot and they're like, shoot, I didn't learn this. Well, oh wow, nothing I can do about it. They're up a creek. And so now these kids have these opportunities to learn and build this material, and they're learning and growing at exponential rates. It's really pretty cool. Sorry.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
High school, I can say for non-canon, is that the work habits are the same, her grades are the same. What's not the same is the amount of late nights and crying and panic. And I am so grateful for the education that she's getting in Northville, and I am so, I mean, they do such an amazing job of just saying, right, like, we're here, what would it be like?
Yeah, I have the benefit of, I had 2 girls in the old system, right? And my oldest came in that first year that you were here, Bill. And to see the difference with my now 6th grader, right? He came home and he was like, well, we all got a 5 on this, you know, practice that we did. And so our teacher said, oh, there's some areas that we need to address a little bit. And reteach and relearn and focus on. And I was like, okay, there was no anxiety. There have been no tears other than when he's sick and he does, you know, he's not able to come to school. But I think the thing that really stands out to me is how connected it is with the IB diploma program, right? That the focus is learning to learn, right? So my kiddo who went through this and kind of got burned out because she's kind of compliant, but she also digs holes for herself. She loves to learn, right? But the old system wasn't engaging to her. It burned her out, right? She was burned out when she left 8th grade, and she will be graduating through the diploma program. So it is that opportunity of giving kids the opportunities to figure out what works for them. How do they learn? Do they have to do all of the practices for math? Well, math comes easy, but other you know, curriculum or other courses are a little bit more challenging. So it is, I think it allows for that depth of knowledge and understanding. And that my question was really around relationships, right? That for kids and for staff, it sounds to me like there's more focus on relationship building. School's a safe place to ask questions. It's okay to make mistakes. We're not just trying to get grades and show, you know, the performative aspect of it, that it's really learning to learn. And, you know, I think we were at a meeting a couple weeks ago, like, what is the point of school? Is it a place where kids go while parents are at work? I don't think it's just that, right? We really are preparing the next generation to contribute and build a world that we all want to live in. So to do that, we do have to ask hard questions, and we're not always going to get the correct answers. But it seems like that's what we're working toward. So that was my question, was around relationships. That what is your sense? Is how is that enriching your experience as staff and your experience as kids? I know for me as a parent, I am thrilled when my son comes home and he's like, yeah, it was fine. We all, you know, we're proficient, and you know, we know what we need to do better. I'm like, okay, yes, we're not sweating over math homework every night, or, you know, there are some sweats, and that's okay. That is part of learning and growing. But that's my question around relationships. And what are you seeing as far as success and rebuilding and repair and growth?
I know that there's a role that I'm scrounging for data, where things are kind of skewed. I can go to Duncan and I can say, hey Duncan, this is where we are right now, and this is what we need to get to the next level. I can have it in a conversation about how to get better. Whereas it's more difficult when you have a kid that's high compliance, does their homework, but sound knows. I have more of the sense of each individual student.
And if I have a student who is a warrior, as she says, I can legitimately talk to her and say, it is truly going to be okay. You know, I believe in you. You've got this. This is going to be okay. And she can believe that.
It builds stronger relationships. Students don't look at us as disciplinarians. They feel like a relationship of trust that, like, hey, if I'm going to turn this project, like, I can come to you and ask, and you'll understand, and not lecture or make me feel bad for time done. Or, hey, I don't agree with my grade. I can have this open conversation and show my point of view. So it builds a stronger relationship of learning and not I'm the disciplinarian and you must be compliant otherwise I'll punish you.
And we're not just the giver of grades. I give you an A and I give you a B and you get a D. The kids know why we got grades. So there's the trust is there, the honesty is there because of the rubrics, because of the explaining, because of they're allowed to reassess. We are not just the giver of the grades. We're just kind of the givers of the feedback, I guess.
Yeah.
I believe when you were talking about like what is the relationship here, I feel like that here at Hillside, we're all just one big family. I feel like the teacher is just like another parent to me because they're never gonna misguide you or lead you wrong. And I feel like while your parents are away, they're the ones watching you, taking care of you. They're taking time out of their day to look after you. I mean, that is their job. That's how they get paid. But also that it's something that they enjoy because you're not going to do a job like it. I feel like the relationships and the bonds that students have with teachers, staff, all around the building, and each other, I think they're very mutual. And that also plays a part in school because you have to have a good social life and you have to have friends. You have that certain teacher that you like that you have to feel comfortable with talking to. Like you might have one teacher that you like, oh, I'm a little lenient with this teacher, but that might be because you're not as open with that teacher, or you guys really have not had any interaction. And then you have the one teacher that you're very cool with. You're not afraid to tell the teacher anything. You guys are like best friends. And I feel like that is like what Hillside is based on.
It's beautiful. Okay. Me? Is it my turn? I have a lot of notes and I am all over the place with this because I'm loving it. Lindsay got my question already, my nicely crafted.
What would you come up with?
Well, that was my question. But since my question got asked, I have been thinking about how could we get parents more on board with this before they come to sixth grade and they're like, what the heck is going on? Because I have a 10th grader now who you know, Miss Lawson. But when he was in 5th grade, I remember being at some parent event and all the parents that had a 6th grader were like, oh my gosh, get ready. It is gonna be so confusing. It's like there's an 8 and then there's a 5, but it's a B and I don't understand. And everyone was freaking out. And so I think if we can get them before they come here and just give them a little, like a softball, this is the intro. And so then, curriculum night, that open house, that it's not totally new. And obviously getting parents to transition day is the first hurdle. Because if I could make it required for all parents to come to board meetings, I would do it. I think they would learn a lot and it would solve a lot of issues. But obviously that's not going to happen. We can't
Never
all.
say never. We can figure it
We could try. I mean,
New board policy.
we'll see.
Policy committee.
I know. But maybe at curriculum night, there could be like the opener, you know, where it's like the 6th grade parents go here, the 7th grade parents go there, the 8th grade parents go there. Because that curriculum night it's no joke. It is like you got 5 minutes and then you're moving and you cram all that info in. So maybe there is that opportunity to do like an opener, you know, and all the 6th grade parents could get, or the 6th grade teachers, sorry, can, you know, give a little highlight of.
And I can speak to that a little bit because I think we do, having just completed the 5th grade transition night, I have one slide that talks a little bit about, you know, IB rubrics. And even then, there's not enough time. It's too confusing. It's something they don't really understand. So we do rely on teachers in that open house piece. But since I'm advocating for things and you ask, you know, how could we do it differently? I guess I'd ask you to consider this. Students go K5 on a 3-point scale, and then we change it, and we go to an 8-point scale, which is really a 4-point scale. Like there's 2 little variations in there, but I think a parent could understand, well, you had 1, 2, 3, and now we just add 4. We could do that. And then if we could just make the grade piece go away, because in middle school, we don't need it. There's no transcript, there's no NHS and GPAs and honor, it's just unnecessary. So when they go K5, we choose to change the game in 6-8, and we don't have to. We have an IB scale, we can use that. We can do 1, 2, 3, just add a little 4. They'll get it. It's the same thing. Looking at the middle school report card, why do we take these 1 through 8s and make A, B, C, D, E's 4 times a year? Because we have to, but we don't. We choose to. We don't have to. So we could retool that middle school report card. We could retool what citizenship means. We have a learner profile. We've been talking about it for 8 years, but you never actually see it on the report card. And I know that we have revisited the elementary report card. That has changed. We used to have letter grades in middle school or letter grades in 4th and 5th grade to get them ready for middle school. Don't need to. Yeah. And they get it. They get it. And I go back to the parent question, right? All the teachers who say, no, they get it. Like we explain it to them, they get it. Kids get it. So I think as much as we can avoid complicating those things, you know, and I think if you ask the teachers, right, what's the most frustrating thing about using the IB scale? Converting it to grades. Because a 5 is not really like a B, like I say it, but really a 5 is just a 5. Then stop it. Let's stop doing that.
I think
So
you guys did a really good job explaining it this year to the 6th grade parent, right? That it was definitely a touch point in each of the classes for curriculum night. And it was, I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, I had the benefit of having like a preview a couple of years ago, but I kudos to the team that this year, I think it's been pretty clear. So growth in that area.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right.
It's up to you guys for changing the culture, right? I also love seeing the improvement in mental health for kids and staff. And I would also, as a parent, say, and for parents too, right, that it is, and we're seeing the learning, right? We're seeing the growth, we're seeing the learning, we're seeing the motivation to learn. And that's a lot better than being motivated just to perform, unless it's your trombone at home at 9 o'clock at night. But that's a totally different topic.
Yeah, I noticed that. I want to affirm that comment that I heard in the voices of the students that they own their learning. You own your learning. That is so transferable. You'll carry that with you up through high school and on into life too. So that you know, that's quite an accomplishment, and I celebrate that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Hillside team, students, thank you so much. Let's give these guys a round.
Thank you all.
Gosh, I can't believe we haven't done these yet.
Thank you, guys.
Whew, that was long.
Bedtime.
It's my bed.
That's right.
Oh yeah, are you doing Neuro at Foster too?
Oh, who's doing?
Neuro at Foster.
I do not know. If
What's
nobody
that?
else wants it, I can do it.
Oh, and the middle one? I've got the middle one listed.
So let's get into our superintendent's report.
Well, we'll go right to the ABCD above and beyond the Call of Duty Awards.
All right, who's going to kick us off?
You are.
I am?
Yep.
All right. Well, above and beyond the Call of Duty Awards, hopefully some of the Hillside staff can stick around because this is a full slate of Hillside teachers. So ABCD Awards are something that the district implemented a few years back to recognize staff who've been nominated by folks in the community for doing just that, going above and beyond. And this is our way of recognizing them. And the first, I have the honor tonight of lifting up, I'll steal others' words, Ms. Canestraro. Is she still here? She is. All right. So she was nominated by, I'll say, several students. And so I have a lengthy set of quotes from students, and then I'll paraphrase these. But again, this is several students who wrote in about Ms. Canestraro. Ms. Canestraro genuinely cares about her students and always goes above and beyond to make them feel safe and welcome in her class. She has truly taught me to embrace who I am and face challenges head on. She has helped me build up my confidence and become a better version of myself. What a great sentiment for a middle schooler to express. Another student said she never makes you feel bad for asking questions. She has a cabinet behind her desk that all the girls can go to get hygiene products whenever they need. She's had a great impact on me because whenever I need to talk to someone or need help with something, I know I can go to her and she will help me. Another student went on to say she helped me improve my essays and helped when I didn't do so well. She encourages us to think outside the box. She teaches us in a style that is super fun, but also helps us learn the topic easier. She doesn't just teach the material, she brings it to life. I feel very lucky and grateful to have her as a teacher. I'm grateful that you've had a couple of my kids in class. I don't know if the feeling is mutual. I know what my kids are like. But definitely want to give you this ABCD award. Ms. Canestraro, you definitely deserve it. Come on up, let's give her a round.
All right, I'm up next. I get the pleasure of presenting an ABCD award to Joyce Pianon, who teaches English here at Hillside. You've been nominated by a student. Miss Pianon went above and beyond by making us feel safe and making us laugh. When we went into lockdown, we were all scared, but Miss Pianon made us all feel safe. Oh, come on up, Miss Pianon. She'll just have to move to the high school. No? No? Oh, okay. No.
Too tall.
Too tall. They're too tall.
Okay, I have the honor and pleasure to present this award tonight, this ABCD award, to Natalie Moutry, one of the assistant principals here at Hillside. Mrs. Moutry was nominated by one of the students here, who said she has done a lot for the students at our school and always goes out of her way to make sure everyone is ready and has everything they need. And I will add that you are such a welcoming presence, and you set the standard for expectations both academically and also behaviorally. I loved during I think it was transition day, when there were a couple students who maybe were running and they got the opportunity to learn to maybe walk a little slower. And I thought that was I loved the tone that you set, and you did it in such a kind, friendly way. So I know that you do so much for the kids here, and it's awesome to be able to celebrate you tonight.
Lisa, do you mind if I jump in really quick too? Because and my kids Miss Moutry came after my kids left Hillside, but I got to witness her at the Michigan PTA Advocacy Day. She brought students, and I think that, along with the presentation tonight, all the things that you do for students to make sure that they get these wonderful opportunities and get to have these new experiences, that's wonderful. So thank you for that, and thank you for bringing that group of students last week. That was really great.
All right. I have the next one as well. Ms. Foster. So Ms. Foster is an ESL teacher here at Hillside. I'm not sure if she's here tonight or not. And the nomination came from a parent who wrote, "My son came to Hillside for the first time in November 2023, and Ms. Foster is not only supporting as an ESL teacher, but also helping him feel accepted, safe, and welcomed. My son is relying on her when something is difficult and he can't find a solution as a new student. We're very appreciative of her support, and my son keeps saying she's the best teacher ever." So I hope you'll all join me in giving a round of applause for Ms. Foster.
Okay, I have the pleasure of getting to read about Mr. Reed Nicholas, aka Mr. Nick. He got nominated by multiple students and a colleague. And just to paraphrase a bit, this one student says he's a very friendly teacher, and he's all inclusive. Another student says he goes above and beyond, having the best attitude of any middle school teacher I've ever met. People like Mr. Nick's art class, not only because it's art, but because he acts like he loves and values every one of his students. Another student said that my friend had problems on the bus and started to cry. He saw us and dropped everything and helped us go to the office, which was what we needed. He was also my cross-country coach and was amazing, making everyone love the season. He's a great teacher, loves everyone at the school, loves helping the special needs classroom. He always brings the sun wherever he goes. And his colleague said that he knows Mr. Nick as a colleague and a parent, and he has taught two of my kids. Mr. Nick is not only an amazing art teacher, but he truly leads with heart. Fostering positive relationships with students is clearly his main focus. He gives them fun nicknames that they love, asks them about things they care about, attends their activities outside of school, and tracks them down during the day to check in on them. My daughters say he is always nice, connects with every student, and is inclusive to everyone. I am thrilled that my girls have an adult like him to look up to, and feel he goes above and beyond the call of duty every day at Hillside. So thank you very much, Mr. Nick.
That was lovely. Well, I tonight have the last nominee for the ABCD Award, Susan Broadfuhrer. Susan, this is a nomination for you, and from two colleagues. Your colleagues say that it takes many people to collaboratively help a student learn and grow, and our paraprofessionals are an integral part of that. Not only does Mrs. Broadfuhrer come to school prepared to support students according to their accommodations and plans, She strives to learn more about them in order to build relationships that will help her understand how best to meet their needs. Mrs. Broadfuhr is a hero among our classrooms, and we want her to know how absolutely appreciated she is and what a difference that you make with students. So thank you very much for that extra effort.
Yay. I was swimming. What instrument? Yes. That's what I played. That's what I played in middle school.
All
All right.
Thank you.
I used AI, so I have a 200-page, what I want to read tonight, superintendent's report.
Right.
No, just want to give a quick shout out to NEF in the sense that tomorrow I'll be teaching at Ammerman. I'll be teaching art kindergarten, 1st and 3rd grade for Miss Rohrhoff. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to do my best Bob Ross tomorrow. We're going to make happy clouds and happy trees. And I might be calling some colleagues over from central office because kindergartners are not my skill set. So thank you all for tonight. And thank you so much.
All right, 8B. Who's this?
Oh, I do want to say it's Advocacy Day, March 12th, or it was on 2024. And the advocacy update, if there's somebody from the PTA who would like to speak to that, and I know there is, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Hello.
Sharing any of my comments that I had from this previous presentation, because thank you, because it's getting late. But you guys, they left. You guys are great. So several of the teachers that my kids have and love, and we love up here. Okay, so I'm here to talk about advocacy. And a lot of you know a lot about what's been going on recently, but for those of you that don't. So I did not attend personally, but the National PTA's legislative conference was held in Washington, D.C. From March 5th to 7th. During their day on Capitol Hill on March 6th, Michigan PTA had meetings with the offices of 10 House members and both senators. With a goal of meeting with all Michigan members of Congress, they have since had one virtual meeting, have one planned for April, and are continuing to work on getting the last one scheduled, so that'll make all of them. During these meetings, they discussed 5 asks, requests, according to me, regarding issues that impact Michigan's children and families. To read the asks and get a better understanding of national PTA advocacy, you can go to pta.org, but some highlights were, number 1, maintaining fiscal year 2023 educational funding levels. In ongoing budget talks, cuts to educational programming have been discussed. The Michigan PTA asked that essential programming such as those that impact special education, English language learners, and grants for addressing the teacher shortage stay at the very least the same. 2, addressing children and teens' online safety. This was also asked for last year, but no bills have been passed. Current laws that govern children's online data privacy and protection have not been updated since 1998. The exponentially increasing development and usage of AI only further highlight the great need to address this issue. Number 3, resources for students impacted by trauma, addiction, and resources for prevention. This is a broad ask that mainly seeks to ensure students have access to trauma-informed care, help with ongoing mental health needs, and that schools have access to resources to combat current issues with substance abuse. 4 is family engagement. This is at the core of what PTA is.
making sure that families find schools welcoming and inclusive. We've just heard a lot about that, and that schools have the resources to help make that happen. Maybe we can give them some tips. 5 was not an ask, but during their meetings, the Michigan PTA found out that a bill to fully fund IDEA has gotten some traction with Michigan members of Congress. It now has 7 bipartisan congressmen and both senators co-sponsoring. This is big. This bill would get IDEA to its promised funding level, finally, over a period of 10 years. Faster would be better. Okay, so that was the national side. And then on March 12th, as you got a little preview, 12 Hillside students, which is the first time that we've had students go with us that I'm aware of, joined 4 students from Meads Mill and 1 from Northville High School, as well as 2 Board of Education members, Mrs. Mutri, Dana Kohler, who is on our PTSA board, me, and at least 5 other parents. Ron's still here? Ron was there. Yeah, at the Capitol in Lansing for Michigan PTA's Advocacy Day. So this is the state level. In addition to attending some programming by Michigan PTA, our group met with the 4 legislators who represent our school district or part of it. So that's Senator Rosemary Bear, Representative Jason Morgan, Representative Kelly Breen, and Representative Matt Colazar. We presented Michigan PTA's legislative asks, which are pretty similar to the national ones, but not exactly. There were 3 asks, each with many bullet points and many details, but in general, ask 1 was to support student health and wellness legislation and funding. Ask 2 was to continue to support school safety legislation and funding. And ask 3 was to support increased and sustained school funding in general. The details included banning vapes that look like school supplies, screening for dyslexia, improving mental health resources, expanding the OK to Say program, passing funds for school infrastructure, protecting the school aid fund, supporting funding for recruiting, retaining, and developing teachers. Again, we could give them some tips. Supporting pre-K education, funding for support of students with disabilities, and supporting funding for mitigation of health and safety issues in schools. Fundamentally important. The students had the opportunity to ask questions of the legislators, 2 of whom, Matt Colazar and Jason Morgan, are former teachers. They were very interested in educating the students about our government and also hearing what is important to them. Later in the afternoon, many of us were able to participate in a group photo with Governor Whitmer. She also answered a few questions and posed for selfies with many of the students. Most of us adults kind of hung back because we felt like the kids, should get priority. One asked about what her favorite part of the job was, and she, of course, said, "This meeting with you." So that was a great end to the day. And I'm sure that you are all dying to know what happened at the Hillside swim meet against Novi this evening, and I came directly from there. And Hillside got their first loss of the season to Novi, but the 200-meter free relay, and if my family's watching on TV or they're laughing at me, broke the school record and won first place. So
Congrats
I'm
to
just
them.
very excited.
Terrific. The pool
Yeah.
record.
So anyway, yeah.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
So it was disappointing, but Novi has some very fast swimmers. Hillside does too, but yeah, Novi got us today. Although there was one student here who was saying she's a swimmer and she might have been at a swim meet. It's like, we could have used you. But. All right, who do I give this to?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, Dr. Weber, does that conclude your report?
It does.
All right, that brings us to our first of 2 opportunities for public comment tonight. Number 9 on our agenda, I will call to the podium. Evan Slotkin. Ms. Slotkin, you know the rules, 3 minutes. Give us a quick introduction to your connection to the district, and then
Yeah.
fire away.
Still freezing. I don't know if anybody else is cold in here tonight, but it's so cold, so my coat's on. I'm Devin Slotkin, member of the community, parent of 2 kids at Silver Springs. I don't need 3 minutes, don't worry. Short and sweet. It's thank you. Thank you. restorative practices training was amazing. And I am so grateful that you included us parents in that. We're so lucky. And I had the pleasure and the honor of being there with the 3 of these fine board members. And we bonded over those 2 days, didn't we? I mean, it was great. We had a great group of people, and Dr. Weber stopped by. It was great to see you there too. And we learned a lot. And you know what? Being in sync with what's going on in the schools, I feel like is so important, right? So I can take this home. I can do this at home with my kids, already have started. And it's great because we're all speaking the same language. They're doing this in school. I can reinforce it at home. So my dream leaving there was just, gosh, couldn't we all just be at this darn training? Couldn't every parent in Northville just be right here in this room? Of course, that's not logistically possible, and everybody can't do that for 2 days, but it would be awesome. It would be awesome. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for extending that to us, because you didn't have to do that, and it was really thoughtful and just wonderfully inclusive of you to do that. So thank you. And in conclusion, I think this is all I wanted to say. I'm trying to remember bullet points. Sign me up for whatever in the next phases of this. I'm in. So there it is. And I can send that to you formally via email, but let me also just shout it from the rooftops. Phase 2, phase 3, whatever you're doing from here, you need parents, I'm in. There you go. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Before I close public comment, going once, going twice. That brings us to number 10 on our agenda, finance and operations. I'll hand it over to our treasurer, Dr. Campbell Wojtal, please. Maybe not. But yeah.
I always see Mike. He's right through the goalpost there. Yes, I'm happy this evening to bring motion number 88, that the board approve the change order to CE Door and Hardware LLC for door hardware at NHS, Meads Mill, and Cook in the amount not to exceed $36,370, funded through the 2020 sinking fund as presented.
Support.
All right, so I have a motion properly presented by Dr. Campbell Wojtal and supported by Ms. McIntyre. Any brief introduction to this? We had it in our packets. You guys discussed it at Finance Committee, but
This is basically, last fall, the board approved a project where we put in the thumb turns in Cook, Meads Mill, in the high school. In doing that, we missed some spots at the high school. And also, one of the things we did not do and didn't plan on, but in retrospect, we're proposing here with this change order, is that all the interior offices in the main office at the high school should be installed with thumb turns. So that's also included in here as well. And again, it's a sinking fund change order.
So I would just like to comment as one of the members on the finance subcommittee with Lisa and with Jim, that I would like to compliment our school leadership team for, taking a look and really auditing and catching, some opportunities that maybe didn't attract our attention originally. And it's just part of the continuing effort to address safety and to be serious about it and pick up new opportunities that still needed to be addressed. And the thumb turns are really important. So thank you for that. And then is there something unique about the lock mechanism we're doing at Cook that is worth commenting on? Or is that in another?
No, it's the same thumb
Book of
turn with a
work.
visual indicator.
Okay, so I think that there is some effort to have door openers.
Yeah, there is a different project.
Different project.
Where we're going to be widening some of the door openings. But again, that's going to be separate. And that is actually, we're using some funding provided by RISA to do that. So.
Yeah.
But that'll be forthcoming. You'll see
Right.
that.
So Cook was my trigger, but just that there's work there to facilitate, passing through the doorways as well as securing the doorways if the need rises. So that's all good work. So thank you. That's the project.
all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you for that. That brings us to number 11 on our agenda. Ms. Irving, do we have anything else? All right. Number 12 on our agenda, our second of 2 opportunities for public comment tonight. Going once, going twice, bringing us to number 13, questions, comments from board members. I have 2. One is just restorative practices We heard about it in public comment, how great the training was. You guys have said that it was great, and I'm really encouraged by that. But seeing it in practice, the 3 or 4 times that we've seen it at board meetings, tonight we saw it. We saw it at the high school. We've seen it at the elementary schools. It's just been magical, and it's a great way for us to see how that really works, and to hear really, it brings out to me what these kids largely are thinking, and how they're making it happen. So, and then, next week is obviously spring break. I wish you all a great spring break and a great week off. Anything else? Questions, comments?
I saw in a mailer that I got around the state of Northville community luncheon. Is that something that will be? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
The Italian banquet.
Yep.
It's at the Italian banquet.
It's in a different spot.
I have just a couple of quick things. I want to, for those who may watch, I'm so sorry that I had to be late. Hillside is such a special school, and just coming into that meeting, I could see that it was a very special presentation, and I will certainly watch it on video. I did have a request for if I could get the slides. They may have been projected during, and on the YouTube, but that would be really great if I could see the slides, because obviously some of the data and other discussion was of meaning to everybody.
Yeah, could we all get the slides? Thank you.
I was at the PTA meeting for Northville High School, and Mr. Koski mentioned that in a lockdown drill, he kind of shakes and rattles the doors and tries to get in as part of, the drill activity. And that one door just came open. And that's one of the reasons they do these audits and drills and whatnot. So I just wondered if maybe, Mike, you could make a note, or if I could reach out to Steve, or maybe Tony did, but just wanting to make sure that the door lock piece here addresses more systematically. I'm sure someone dealt with that exact door, but just wanting to make sure that systematically that be lifted up, since that was a finding of a recent lockdown. I don't know any more details than that. That was about the extent of what they covered there. I want to give a shout out to our academic games teams. There's a bunch of parents who individually coach these kids, and our academic games kids won several rounds of the state tournament level in the the elementary grades and middle school grades. Our high school team also was successful, and a number of these kids are going to be advancing to nationals. So that's the Atlanta trip that everyone approved tonight. So that's very exciting, because these kids are really competitive nationally, and we could see some, some great results there. But definitely a ton of hard work for our kiddos and parents. And then lastly, I just want to thank you for the quick introductions you've made to restorative practices among the board. I've been using at home. Lisa, your tip about, I'd be so happy if something happened today and whatnot. And I'm not sure I'm always 100% successful with it, but then again, I didn't attend any of the training, so I'm doing my best. But it's, I had my youngest gave me the gift of being able to explore how we impact others
See,
this
you just
week.
used it.
So did I?
He gave you the gift.
And so I used that, and it turns out Ms. Caudill then used some similar themes. So I think it was Laura, I can't remember whose point it was about using these things, or maybe it was Devin, using these things at home and having that common vocabulary and whatnot was very cool for me. So thank you for that, and happy spring break to everyone.
Yeah. I wanted to give a shout out too for the IB, the IB art exhibition that's currently running at the Art House. I got to visit that today. That's why I was late. They had their opening reception tonight, and this year it's on 2 floors. There's plenty of room to move around, and the art is phenomenal. Just the variety and the depth, and just the techniques that the kids used. There were a couple pieces that we were like, you know what, for a high school level student, it's really impressive. So I hope you go check it out. And it's running, I think, through March 31st. So
that's great. Well, I'll just add to the shout out to the academic games team from NHS is also being joined by the Meads Mill group. Meads Mill has 19 children on that team that's leaving to go to Atlanta. So, good luck, and we'll be cheering them on. So.
I'm going to go.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
I just wanted a point of clarification based on that email. So we have a cow on the 2nd, but we don't have anything on the 16th. Is that accurate? Okay. Okay, okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. I feel awkward about this, although I don't know why, it's probably all in my head. The piece that Laura read about the National Michigan PTA, that's me. I am still the federal legislative chair for the Michigan PTA, so I was the one that was in DC with a group of 4 other people from the Michigan PTA board. We had a great time. I always do. I enjoy it. But it was really interesting to hear the feedback from legislators. It is disappointing, and I know it kind of relevant to the things we talk about at the local level in terms of there seems to be some discussion about, all the spending that's happened the last couple of years and keeping that going. The tap seems to, they kind of want to maybe tighten the tap a bit. And we're trying to keep that from happening because we know that a lot of important things have happened the last couple of years, but everyone here knows about that. And I just want to commend Laura for really having the students there at the state one. That was really great. It really was. I mean, they're the why of why we do this, and having them there and getting to interact with the legislators and ask questions. And I love the fact that our legislators took the time and they were so open to it. So, and just even like, where are these people? Where do they go to their offices? And, who, and meeting with a staff member as opposed to the legislator themselves, and who is the staff person that we're talking to, and just things like that. I think it's a really great experience for both sides, right? Because it's a reminder to our legislators of who they're impacting when they make decisions about education.
Power of the constituent too.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do impact what happens in those offices.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though it really was a challenge in the group photo with Governor Whitmer to stand back and let all the kids have a selfie when I was like, I want a selfie. But no, I stood back. I let the kids go in front. I didn't elbow anyone out of the way as much as I wanted to.
And if I may make one, Rebecca, so some exciting news. I've always wanted to kind of give you this intro, or somebody this intro. So attention, Kroger shoppers.
They're wet cleanup.
The baskets.
Our ads are out. Good, good.
So if you go Krogering, please make sure to take a look there.
Times a week.
Amazing,
I know, I'm
Rebecca, thank you for giving me that opportunity.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Good idea.
If someone goes, can we take a picture of a cart and send it to all of us? I want to see it.
Yeah. Like we should
time
have a
do they
little
close?
like.
Let's all go.
Let's all go Krogering tonight.
He can do his selfie.
They're there now.
On my drive
It's right down the street.
I know,
It's just there.
Oh, is I?
They're very old. We're very excited about.
I get
grocery
excited about
showers.
this.
All right.
All right.
On that super positive note, should we call us adjourned? Everybody good with that?
Sounds good.
Yes.
Thank you.
7:04, we're adjourned.